Part 112. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1112. Although Musun does not have dragon tendons like the dragon girl in the plot, her bones and blood change, so as long as her vertebrae are extracted, they can be made into sharp arrows. The demon descending originally has no entity, and there are very few things in this world that can hurt it, but the bone arrow made from Musun's body will definitely be one of the divine objects that can hurt it. Naturally, Lily had heard about the mutation of the Kyushu continent a long time ago. Without finding the dragon girl and no life and death disk to enter the outer sea, it was difficult for Heaven to find another scapegoat. There were so many people from the Kyushu continent. When he rushed to Bihai, Lily also followed. Due to Musun's unique lethality, many people who consider themselves to be inferior in cultivation do not dare to approach the Bihai area. Many people from Kyushu are stationed outside Bihai, waiting for Qian's return. Wearing the clothes of a disciple of Lang Yuan Cave, he led Qinglian and followed Master Shangshan, and had officially approached the sea area where Musun was. Although Musun was fierce, Master Shangshan really didn't take him seriously. A shadow with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fishtail swam flexibly on the sea surface. A few strands of dark hair were scattered in the sea water, like seaweed. "Get out," a woman's cold and gloomy voice rang out. The voice seemed to come from all directions. Master Shangshan, Qinglian, Qian and other three people stood back to back. The surrounding sea water was swaying very violently, and wave after wave of sea waves came one after another. However, when the sea water rushed towards Master Shangshan and others, it seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier, which told them to get out. Female voices sounded one after another, and Master Shangshan was still exhorting Qian. "Musun's body contains Zug's blood. When you kill her later, you must use a jade gourd to secure the blood." Ha 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 ha. Before Master Shangshan could finish his words, the female voice suddenly became sharp, and gradually became a bit fierce. "Get out. You are not welcome here." The originally calm sea surface gradually started to stir up waves. The sound went from soft to loud, from low to high, and finally the sound was as sharp as a fine needle, piercing people's ears one by one. It hurts people's ears. Well, Qinglian was fine, and Master Shangshan felt fine. He was originally water, and Musun's voice didn't do much harm to him, but Qian was different. He was a human being. And since he was a male human being, the damage caused by the sound to him increased exponentially. When the sound reached his ears, he not only felt an indescribable temptation, but also felt a faint fear rising from his heart. There was a look of intoxication on his face, and he didn't realize that his pupils were dilated. When Master Shangshan turned his head and saw Qian's appearance, he was startled. Before he could speak, the woman's soft laughter rang out. It seems to be from far to near. There was a sound of people being separated while wandering in the sea water, and a shadow wandered in the sea water as fast as lightning. With a whoosh sound, a figure jumped up from the sea, and the large splash of water blocked it. Touching the woman's cheek, she could only feel the coldness and despair coming from her body, and the fishy smell of sea water and the smell of blood seemed to float in the nose, making people want to vomit. A green tail raised up, and with a bang, it hit the shield made of water by Master Shangshan, causing the water curtain to sway uncontrollably. "Get out. Get out of here," a cold and sinister voice sounded in several people's ears. In the mist that filled the sky, the three of them vaguely saw a slender and graceful figure. The hair was extremely long, reaching down to the end, and the face was blurry. When he spoke, his two hands had already reached Qian's chest. When she saw that the slender fingertips were about to penetrate Qian's chest, Qinglian on the side stretched out her hand without thinking. She held two Liwo lotus nails in her hand and hit Musun hard on the back of her hand. Musun let out a scream and fell back into the sea with a bang. After a splash of waves, the cold feeling and murderous aura before disappeared completely, leaving only a series of huge monsters on the sea surface. Beyond the ripples, Musun's figure gradually disappeared again. "Are you okay?" Qinglian asked Qian worriedly. Qian, who was originally a little hazy, gradually regained his clarity after Musun's voice suddenly disappeared. Only when he regained his clarity did he realize something shocking. "My soul almost left my body just now." Before seeing Musun's face, his soul was almost shaken away when he heard the voice. If Master Shangshan or Qinglian didn't come with him today, maybe Musun really wasn't that easy to kill. He swallowed, calmed down, and was about to speak. Not far away, on a small piece of ice that was exposed above the sea, a graceful figure climbed up, with the lower half of the fish tail hanging in the sea water, looming. The surface of the extreme northern sea was covered with a layer of smoke, making it difficult to see her lower body clearly. However, her hair, which was as thin and thick as seaweed, hung down from behind her. Her slender waist showed her graceful figure, and her fingers were touching the sea water. She made a stroke in the middle and pulled out a beautiful shadow. When she lowered her head and fixed her hair, everyone could clearly see the beautiful breasts on her chest, which were exposed without any modification. Musun, whom several people were looking for from the beginning, finally showed up. "I have no enmity with you, why do you want my life?" When Musun turned around, Qinglian subconsciously covered his eyes before Qian could open his eyes. "Don't look, don't listen." Although he is a human being, he has a beauty that can be coveted by the descendants of Zug. Even though he has been cursed, Musun still has unparalleled beauty. His face is extremely beautiful, as if it was carved with great effort by a great power. The model that came out has a pair of slender willow leaf eyebrows, a pair of autumn-like eyes under the eyebrows, and a pair of pink lips. The figure under the slender neck will make even a mature succubus feel jealous, but it is a pity that under the slender waist but it was a cyan fish tail, covered with ugly and ferocious scales, which looked very abrupt. This is the curse that Musun suffered after eating her own child. Tiger poison does not eat its children. She hurt her own bones and blood, so she was punished. She was not allowed to leave here for the rest of her life. Her legs turned into fish tails, and she became neither human nor monster today. The monster lives in the cold living water and lives forever. The long hair was spread behind her, making her body look very slender, but such a woman had almost hurt Qian just now. Qinglian's eyes gradually became cold, and Master Shangshan snorted. "Naijan, you killed the disciples of Lang Yuan Cave, and now I can't spare you." Musun laughed. The sound was like a silver bell, very pleasant to the ear. She laughed softly first, and then followed. He slowly hummed a song again, with a gentle voice, and the rough waves suddenly calmed down. Master Shangshan held the magic formula in his hand and paused for a moment. "Musun, if you can conquer the devil, you can. Your merits are immeasurable, and you will be on the list of gods one day. I will definitely remember your name." Before he could finish his words, Master Shangshan said urgently, "Be careful." Musun, who was still sitting on the ice, suddenly hit the sea surface with her tail. After splashing a large wave, her body actually jumped into the air. The whole person rushed towards the three of them like an arrow from a string, with a sharp scream coming from his mouth. Master Shangshan took out a jade box, and the box opened in response. There were 7 or 8 small shining golden swords lying inside. He threw the box and the small sword was thrown out and swelled up in the wind. In a blink of an eye, it grew to half a foot long and as wide as a palm, and was flying in the air. After a few turns, a circle was formed. When Musun pounced on him, the sword surrounded him in the circle. Then they surrounded her. When Musun entered the sword formation, the originally dim sword suddenly became radiant. When Musun rushed towards her, the light from the sword shone on her body, and there was a sound of skin and flesh cracking. She let out a shrill scream, obviously terrified of the light. 8 direction sword formation, Qinglian saw the power of the sword formation. He was also startled, leaning on Qiyin with a pitiful expression. These 8 small swords have a very ancient origin. They were originally refined by Master Shangshan from the sacred stones from outside the 9 heavens, and then calcined with the true fire of Samadhi. The day the swords were completed, they would suffer a catastrophe. Because these 8 small swords were too lethal, Master Shangshan kept them in Langyuan Mountain and nourished them with spiritual energy, hoping to eliminate the hostility brought about by the swords from the time they were cast. This sword will not be released easily on ordinary days, but once it is released, the sword is already extremely powerful. 8 small swords form a sword formation, and the lethality is doubled, and because the sword body is picked from outside Jushin, the sacred stone has a restraining effect on spirits and monsters. Qinglian itself is a 5th grade lotus. Fortunately, the lotus is a plant and not an animal like other flesh and blood. In addition, the light has not yet shined on her, so at this time I am just afraid of light. But it was difficult for Musun, who was caged in the sword formation at this moment. When the light shone on her body, her fair and plump upper body was cut with 7 or 8 bloody marks by the sword energy in an instant, and because of the light, due to the burn, the scar was quickly sealed again, and not a drop of blood was exposed. Although there was no blood dripping at the scene, Musun had obviously felt pain. Several strands of her originally beautiful seaweed-like hair were cut off, and her beautiful appearance was quickly changed beyond recognition. She suddenly let out a scream, with a somewhat ruthless look on her face. "That's too much. I'll fight you." She rushed toward Master Shangshan and the others, but the sword formation blocked her tightly. The 8 long swords rotated in the air, forming a dazzling halo that engulfed her body. With wounds all over his body, Musun tried several times to break out, but failed. Master Shangshan intended to take her life this time, so he took out a killing weapon that had never seen blood in 10,000 years. Musun was obviously angry because of the pain, and she suddenly fell into the sea with a bang. The tail of her lower body slapped the sea surface hard, and with a boom, the sea water was slapped by her, forming a huge wave and rolled up. She originally contained a trace of Pangu's spiritual power in her body, but she took action in anger, and with the help of sea water, when the large sea water rolled up, it hit the sword formation. Although the sword array was extremely powerful, when it was hit by the sea water, it was shaken for a moment, and the halo flashed. Master Shangshan frowned. Musun was already going crazy, and he was obviously ready to fight them to the death. Her tail kept slapping on the sea, and the sea water came one after another. The sky became gloomy, and the surrounding thunder flashed. There was a cracking sound from the iceberg not far away, and the sound of the waves spread farther and farther, even the faint screams of disciples could be heard. Oops! Many people from Juzhu continent accompanied Master Shangshan to the far north this time. Because they were afraid of Musun's ability, they did not enter her territory. But at this time Musun got angry and actually, "You dare to hurt innocent people. Once the waves come out, I don't know how many people who don't practice enough will die in the rage of the sea. Evil obstacle, hurry up and catch him." Master Shangshan was also angry at this moment, and he shouted fiercely, and the 8-way sword array rotated faster. Musun's aura became much weaker, and the muffled thunder in the sky became louder, as if it was ringing above everyone's head. "Humph! I want you all to die here. All die, all die," Musun screamed, his tail stirring in the sea as if desperately, and whirlwinds blew up from the sea. The wind became stronger and stronger, and the wind was extremely terrifying, blowing her long hair up. After her originally beautiful appearance was injured at this time, she looked like a ghost, which was very scary. The light of the originally solid sword formation dimmed a bit under the wind blowing at this time, and there was a click of lightning across the sky, and purple lightning rolled among the dark clouds. Musun raised his head and let out a sharp scream. The sound spread farther and farther. Qiyin couldn't bear it anymore and spit out a large mouthful of blood with a wow sound from his mouth. No, this beast is crazy, Qi Yin coughed twice, and Master Shangshan was about to take action again. Musun swung his tail hard and hit a shining golden sword. There was a puff sound, and the fish tail was cut off by the sharp sword body. The long sword whined and fell heavily from the air. A painful cry came out of Musun's mouth. After missing a long sword, the power of the sword array was suddenly reduced a lot. What Musun had just done had already caused some damage to the aura of the sword array, but now after finishing a long sword, she did it again. 4 or 5 swords were knocked down in a row, and 6 of the 8 sword formations were eliminated at once, leaving only 2, although they were still powerful. But he could no longer control Musun. Her breath was also weaker than before, and most of the original cyan fish tail had been cut off. Scales were scattered all over the sea. Her beautiful face was now very pale and miserable, and when she looked at the faces of Master Shangshan and the other 3 people, she showed hatred. "You beast, you dare to destroy my magic weapon!" The little sword fell on the sea, partially broken into 2 pieces. It was obvious that its spiritual power had been greatly lost and it could no longer be used. Master Shangshan was furious, but Musun grinned, suddenly swung his tail, and rushed towards Qi Yin. At this point, Musun King knew that these people must have come to kill her and had no intention of leaving her alive. Naturally, she wanted to fight to the death. She also saw that Qi Yin among the 3 was a difference. At this time, she rushed towards Qi Yin. Because she had the thought of perishing together, her movements were so fast that Master Shangshan could not react. Qing Lian was shocked and turned pale, while Musun smiled sweetly at Qi Yin. She was so beautiful, and the scars all over her body did not detract from her peerless beauty, and even gave her a look of pity out of thin air. Qi Yin was stunned for a moment, and almost forgot to dodge. "How dare you!" In the midst of Master Shangshan's shock and anger, Musun's hand touched Qi Yin's chest. Her scarred hand's nails suddenly became extremely long, and when she was about to scratch Qi Yin's chest, boom, there was a loud noise, and a thunderbolt fell from the sky, hitting the top of her head. "Ah!" Musun let out a painful scream. The power of thunder and lightning was caused by the way of heaven. Qian was a destined person and was protected by the way of heaven. Musun's actions were against the way of heaven, so he was naturally punished. God sent. But Musun was worthy of his reputation as a fierce man. Although she quickly retreated after being injured, she quickly reacted and rushed towards Qi Yin again. This time Qing Lian also reacted in the same way. When Musun stretched out his hand, Qing Lian pushed Qi Yin away, and Musun's hand touched her heart. When the hand reached into King Lian's chest, it came up empty and did not touch the heart. When Musun realized that he had caught the wrong person, murderous intent appeared in his eyes. When he reached out to kill Qing Lian, he suddenly saw something in front of him. Standing was a woman. "You never kill women, Musun, are you going to disobey your oath?" Qing Lian yelled angrily, and Musun was stunned for a moment. She did not kill women. She only hated those men. Those who wanted to kill were only those men. She never killed women, even if a woman accidentally entered her territory, she had sworn to it. Musun subconsciously retracted his hand, saying that it was too late. Master Shangshan, who was holding a handful of cold sweats, saw this scene, his sleeves shook, and he threw his immortal rope out without thinking. With 2 swish sounds, the fairy rope turned into a heavenly and earthly net, trapping Musun heavily. She was already seriously injured, and her reaction was delayed by King Lian's words. At this time, when the immortal rope was thrown towards her, she was unable to dodge anymore. She was tied tightly and could no longer escape. Unable to move. Humph! Master Shangshan saw that the immortal rope was holding Musun, and then he closed the net with force. The net slowly flew towards him, and Musun was trapped in it, unable to struggle, his soft and scarred body being twisted into a humiliating angle. Her eyes showed a look of deathly gray, and she slowly closed her eyes. A tear rolled down from the corner of her eye. I had the chance to meet the real person a few years ago. At that time, the real person was holding a fairy rope. When I met the real person again a few years later, the real person still looked like this. He always liked to bully the small. After the dust settled, the three of them thought that the matter had been solved perfectly, that the purpose of this trip had been achieved, and that the devil had a way to deal with it. Just as a happy smile appeared on his face, a female voice suddenly sounded. For some reason, Master Shangshan suddenly remembered that a few years ago, in the territory of Langyuan Mountain, the disciples from Langyuan Cave and the people from Hongliang Mountain were fighting each other. He rushed to capture several disciples from Hongliang Mountain and tied them up with immortal ropes. The scene of being caught, but destroyed by others. When he heard that voice again, his brows trembled. In mid-air, a figure slowly appeared. Although it did not look like the ordinary human girl before, the moment Lily appeared, Master Shangshan still recognized her. A similar scene to a few years ago happened again, and Master Shangshan's face changed drastically. You again. I have said before. We are still destined to meet the real person, and now we have met as expected. Lily smiled and nodded to the real person. She came a little late. When she arrived, Musun had already flooded many monks in the Kyushu continent with sea water, causing countless casualties. She sensed movement here and rushed over. Unexpectedly, when she came over, she happened to encounter Musun being arrested. The fairy tying rope that originally moved slowly towards Master Shangshan moved quickly towards her under Lily's call this time. Lily stretched out her hand to catch it without opening her mouth. A large amount of spiritual energy came from not far away. Several people turned their heads, and Lily also looked up. A group of ancient immortals were flying towards them, and the ones with lower cultivation levels were already dead. Only Shang, who was more advanced in cultivation, was still there, and there was no movement here. Obviously they are all ready to help. Are you okay? Lily glanced at the crowd, then lowered her head, and casually tore off the rope that bound the immortals. Seeing her action, Master Shangshan showed a bit of anger on his face. Lily said 3 times, having ruined his good deeds twice, and now even more so, ruining his magic weapon. If he hadn't dealt with Lily before and knew that she was not easy to mess with, Master Shangshan would have lost his temper by now. The rope that bound the immortal was torn off, and Musun's body rolled out limply. He had no strength to float in the air anymore. Lily's expression was cold, but a piece of sea water was controlled by her and turned into a soft water bed. Hold Musun firmly. I. Of course Musun was not good. Most of her lower tail had been cut off, her body was covered in scars, and she had also received a blow from heaven. She could only hold on until now with her breath. When she was rescued by Lily, her eyes were already dim. Lily reached out to touch her tail. She instinctively wanted to shrink her tail, but it quickly and feebly dropped down, like a dying fish, full of defense but helpless. Lily smiled slightly, and when her hand touched Musun's legs, the originally green fish tail gradually turned into a pair of white jade legs under her palm, but the legs had been cut off below the knee. Musun moved a little, and when she felt that her legs had changed from fish tail to human form, a surprised smile appeared on her face. She looked up at Lily and moved her lips. In fact, her legs were only cursed by a monk with high magic power. Once someone is stronger than the person who cursed her, if they want to undo her curse, it is not impossible. Lily's strength has already surpassed the Logo Jinxian level, and the spiritual power forced on her was removed under her hands, but it was a pity that the leg could not be saved. Using lotus roots as limbs, I'm afraid they can be restored if they are reattached, she said, but Musun smiled. This succubus, who was extremely fierce when fighting against Shangshan Jinren and others, is now as gentle and shy as an ordinary girl. It's not easy to change my own legs again. How can I let my body be contaminated with strange things? What, there was a look of disgust and resentment on her face. Her character was obviously very strong, and she had reached the point of deep hatred and resentment towards monsters and monsters. Thank you for your help." She reached out to touch her leg. But his hand dropped weakly. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1113. In fact, Musun was already deeply injured when he broke through the 8 direction sword formation before. Coupled with the thunder bombardment from Tiandeo, Musun was only at the end of his strength at this time. Lily wanted to save her, but there was a deathly look in her eyes. "You are seriously injured." Lily touched her leg and sighed. A curtain of water in her hand turned into a transparent gauze, gently covering her scarred and exposed body in front of everyone. Shangshangenren and others did not regard Musun as a human being, but as a monster animal, so they did not care about her naked body. Lily's actions at this time made Musun's eyes feel wet and hot. She stared at Lily. "I know. They want your life because they want to kill you and use your flesh, skin, and bones as weapons to destroy the devil." Musun grinned and tilted his head to the side weakly. "I know. If I don't save you, you will die." Lily paused, "And because you have been cursed, are not pure blood, and have been bombarded by heaven, if you die, your body will die, and your 3 souls and 7 souls will be destroyed. Disperse and never have the chance to be reincarnated again." I know. Her black hair was spread all over her body. After hearing Lily's words, she still nodded. She knew that if she died, these people in front of her would want to use her body to make a magic weapon. She knew that if she died, her body and soul would disappear. No matter they are spirits, mortals, or gods, everyone is afraid of death, especially the fear of death and the loss of even the chance of reincarnation, but Musun is not afraid. The death that ordinary people fear is just a relief for her. She is cursed, and she is neither human nor ghost. "I have lived for so many years as a monster, not a monster, not a monster. I can't live, but I can't, and I can't die." She was trapped in the sea, and the ugly fish tail reminded her of what she had experienced and what she had done. Hatred overwhelmed her day after day, and she lived in pain and suffering, unable to escape. She was betrayed by Zug's descendants and gave birth to an evil child. She was abandoned by her tribe in fear. The tribesmen regarded her as a monster and a dirty thing. When she was hurt, she had no way to seek help. When she gave birth to the monster in fear, she completely collapsed. She wanted to hide the disgusting thing, but there was nowhere to hide it. It followed her like a ghost. As she swallowed the thing, her legs turned into fish tails. Completely transformed into a monster that everyone fears. When she is hurt by others, no one will come to help her, but when she hurts others, there are always people who think that she has made an unforgivable mistake. This tale reminded her of the hurt she had suffered and how she had felt, making it something she could not forget for a day. "Actually, I have long wanted to be freed." She was just unwilling to die in such an image, which meant that she would have something to remind her of the injuries she had suffered and the mistakes she had made until she died. Not far away, figures came one after another. Lily looked at the scarred woman who was already dying, but she showed such a gentle expression. "Thank you for allowing me to get rid of all that filth before I die." A crystal teardrop rolled down from the corner of her eye. The originally transparent water droplet should have turned into mist and disappeared when it fell on Musun, but that droplet, the tears, did not disappear. Instead, they rolled around her body twice and fell on the water curtain that held Musun up. This woman who appeared due to the arrangement of heaven was deeply hurt. Her life was subtly similar to the original owner. She should have been full of hatred. But at this time, it was because someone else gave her back what she had. I just gave her a layer of water mist to hide her shame, but she could still easily say the word thank you. Lily suddenly wanted to laugh. It was precisely because Musun's thank you contained so much weight that she could have saved her. In the end, he chose to respect Musun's own wishes. The soul is about to disperse. King Lian's somewhat anxious voice sounded, as if it were an ordinary spirit. Once the soul is dispersed, the skin left behind will be much less useful. Musun is different from ordinary spirits. She was originally just an ordinary human being and should not have lived for such a long time. However, because she took the blood of the descendants of Zug, the reason, coupled with the power of the curse, is why she lives longer than ordinary people. Her body alone cannot sustain it for such a long time. Now Lily has wiped away the curse on her body, and her soul has been dispersed, and she can stay. When in the physical body, it is no longer effective. As soon as Qing Lian finished speaking, Master Shangshan was a little anxious. He shouted angrily and took out a small mirror from his arms. "Who are you monsters? Get out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." The mirror he held in his hand was the combination of yin and yang. At this moment, Master Shangshan was obviously angry because Musun's body was about to disappear. This was the only chance for the Kyushu continent. If Musun died, this would be missing. Opportunity: where can I find the dragon girl to get rid of the demon? Pandeo, this is for the sake of all the people in the world. If you don't get out of the way, you will be going against the ancient continent. If the existence of the world is protected by sacrificing women and children, what is the use of such people? Lily sneered. Without raising her head, she casually wiped her hand across Musun's body, a trace of soft spiritual power being sent out from her palm. The ancient power gently soothed Musun's injured body, easing her pain before death. The water drops were sprinkled on her body, as if the cold sea smell on her body was washed away. Her pupils gradually dilated, and her beautiful eyes gradually began to turn gray. Seeing that the situation was not good, Master Shangshan hurriedly wanted to take action, but a curtain of water blocked him again. He gritted his teeth, took out a bright yellow formation flag from his cuffs, threw it into the air, and said in his mouth, "Kinkan flag, listen to my orders." The flag became bigger and bigger, and the bright yellow flag was covered by the wind blew loudly, and the next moment Master Shangshan took the flag in his hand, waved it hard, and shouted, "Break it for me." His voice contained supreme majesty and solemnity. The muffled thunder in the sky seemed to sound faster and faster. Thick purple lightning flashed in the clouds, like a giant dragon with teeth and claws. The sea level was split in half by the power summoned by the Kinkan flag from Master Shangshan. The sea water was divided into two sides, revealing the bottomless underwater world. Many sea people had no time to escape and were split to death under the power of this flag. The bodies of 6 Isoso floated on the sea surface, densely packed. Injustice. Master Shangshan rolled his eyes and sighed. Qi Yin was a little anxious, holding the list of gods in his hand, and shouted, "Master, there is no need to say more to her." Qing Lian listened to him. They also showed fighting postures, and the three of them stared at Lily eagerly. But at this moment, Musun finally changed, and her 3 souls and 6 souls completely disappeared. When Shangshan Genren and others attacked in desperation, the huge strong wind blew on her body. Her body instantly turned into specks of smoke and dust, and disappeared completely as soon as the wind blew. A colorful bead rose up where she originally landed, and slowly flew towards Lily. The tears left by Musun, Lily spread her hands, and the bead seemed to have its own consciousness, falling into her palm and breaking into pieces again with a pop sound. It turned into water droplets, as if still carrying the residual warmth from Musun's body, and gradually evaporated in Lily's palm. Seeing this scene, Master Shangshan and others turned pale. Musun was dead. Now the 3 souls and 7 souls have disappeared, and the physical body has been destroyed. Now that Musun is gone, what can we do to destroy Mojang? Lang Yuandong has paid so much for this, can it only end up with this result? This time, for the battle to confer gods, countless disciples of Lang Yuan cave were killed and injured, but when things came to an end, it was as if heaven had played a huge joke on him, and Musun disappeared. The devil has appeared in the world and is becoming more and more common. If there is no way to control him at this time, what will happen to the Zhou continent in the future? Master Shangshan was a little at a loss for a while. Master. The monk who came from a distance finally arrived. The leader was the man from Langyuan cave. After looking at Master Shangshan from a distance, the people in Langyuan cave first realized something was wrong. After discovering the lily that appeared inexplicably in mid-air, a group of anxious people immediately stopped talking. He glanced at Lily first, then suppressed his grief and rushed to Master Shangshan and said, "Master! The sea monster took action before and killed many of his disciples. It's her." The leader was in a panic. As soon as he said this, a sharp male voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. At this time, Yu Li, a disciple of Genren Shangshan, suddenly came out of the crowd, pointed at Lily, and panicked. Shouted, "It's her, she is the dragon girl, she is the dragon girl, she has taken away the life and death plate." As soon as these words were spoken, the people in Langyuan cave naturally knew who the dragon girl was. That day when Mengzhe was giving a lecture, Yu Li told everyone about the dragon girl in the outer sea. Everyone in the world knew that the dragon girl could destroy demons. The key to falling. It was precisely because Master Shangshan at that time couldn't find a way to enter the outer sea area, so he had no choice but to think of another way to deal with Musun. Unexpectedly, he really couldn't find a way to find a place after wearing iron shoes, and it took no effort at all. Master Shangshan, who had looked ashen before, perked up after hearing Yu Li's words. Sure enough, heaven had its own arrangements. Although Musun died, another dragon girl came to his door. Compared with the pseudo-Pangu inheritance like Musun, a dragon girl like Lily who was born from Pangu's tears would be more suitable to deal with Pangu. Recalling that he had met Lily a few years ago, he should have remembered Lily's identity long ago. If he was sure of this, why did he waste time by sending Qi Yin to travel in search of the outer sea? If it hadn't been for the Wuji old Taoists' nonsense that day, he wouldn't have had to abandon the near and seek the far away. For the sake of Musun, he would have lost the lives of many ordinary disciples in Langyuan mountain. It was Dao Long who took away the life and death disc of Langyuan cave back then? Please return it to fellow Taoist monks. Master Shangshan flicked his sleeves and stared at Lily. Qi Yin also knew that he was the destined person chosen by heaven, and understood that he needed to complete the task of getting rid of the devil in order to accumulate merit and achieve a golden body. Today, Musun originally thought that they would be able to succeed, but they almost missed it because of Lily's sudden intervention. Ruining it was like destroying Qian's future, so he naturally felt resentful. At this time, a dragon girl who was more useful than Musun came, and Qi Yin was even more excited than Master Shangshan. "Master, why do you need to tell her so much?" "For the sake of all the people in the world, for the sake of Zhou continent, and the living beings in the three realms." The slogan is loud, but I don't know if you have the skills to do it. Lily shook her hands. The temperature of the tears just now was obviously not high, but it seemed to be burned into her body. At this time, the palm of her hand, there is still the warmth of tears in my heart. She waved her hand. Master Shangshan's eyes darkened, and he suddenly said, "Kinkan Banner, listen to my orders. Wind, thunder, lightning, go." The thunder and lightning rushing in the sky were like roaring dragons, rushing towards Lily. I don't know where this Kinkan flag came from, but it is really powerful. The wind, thunder, and lightning it summons can move like this, and its power is no less than the power of heaven. Along with the movements of Master Shangshan, the sea surface became violently windy. Many disciples also used their special skills to attack Lily. Qinglian lowered her head and conjured a handful of lotus seeds out of thin air, which she threw into the sea. After these lotus seeds fell into the water, they sprouted and bloomed, and the sea area quickly turned into a sea of green lotus flowers, surrounded by lilies. While everyone was attacking, Qian pulled out a small golden bow from his back. The bow was lavender in color, and there was no arrow in his hand. He pulled the string with his bare hands, stepped forward with his feet, and leaned his upper body backwards. When he released the string with his hand, he only heard a buzz sound, and there was a clear sound on the empty string. Nothing. However, a large ball of purple light came out of the string and shot towards Lily. Lang Yuan Cave is really willing to spend a lot of money this time. In order to kill himself, he used all his magic weapons. These attacks formed a dense dragnet, with thunder and lightning in the sky and thunder and lightning overhead. People from the Kyushu continent were everywhere around them, and the bottom was densely covered with green lotuses. Blocking the path of the lily to sink, these green lotuses shone with a faint green light, and the blooming petals looked like the mouths of beasts that wanted to choose people and devour them. These people really wanted to kill themselves, and they were about to do it. Lily curled her lips. Just because of this, you want to take my life? After hearing this, Master Shangshan had a bad premonition in his heart for no reason. He subconsciously looked at Yali. Although he didn't speak, Yali also understood the unspoken meaning in Master Shangshan's eyes. Obviously asking him about the time since Dragon Girl was born. Is it about 100,000 years? Yali nodded firmly. He saw all this from the life and death chart that day. The life and death chart is a divine tool, and it is absolutely impossible to see it wrong. Seeing the disciple's affirmative reply, Master Shangshan was convinced. There was no longer any scruples, and all kinds of methods were used. The command flag in his hand was waving vigorously. A dragon girl who was only born 100,000 years ago dares to speak lies. Today's dragnet will definitely make you come back. The purple light rushed towards the lily. Master Shangshan commanded the thunder and lightning to strike down at the lily. The green lotuses on the sea merged together one by one, and finally gathered into a huge lotus platform, which was in full bloom waiting for the lily to fall and then cut it. Catch. These people cooperated very cleverly. The disciples of Lang Yuan Cave were responsible for blocking Lily's path. Master Shangshan forced Lily into the sea, and Qinglian was responsible for catching Lily. Everyone cooperated seamlessly. It would be a joke if the dragon girl, who had just emerged from her shell 100,000 years ago, had to escape today under the siege of so many people. Non-human spiritual beings would activate their intelligence very late, and the process would be wasted. A lot of training time, plus the process of turning animals into humans. 100,000 years is inconceivable to ordinary people. For spirits, especially long-lived creatures like dragons, it is just a process of growing into humans. Seeing that the people in Juz who looked like they wanted to kill themselves, these attacks were almost hitting Lily. Shangshan Genren and others showed ecstasy in their eyes. Qinglian even pinched his fingerprints. Lily suddenly raised her head. Her originally delicate face turned into a huge dragon head, and she ducked into the sea with a twist. Hurry! Seeing Lily being cornered by a group of people, and finally falling into a trap, Qiyin shouted, and the next moment Lily turned into a dragon and dived into the sea with a pop. Before the large green lotus that was originally in full bloom had time to close up and trap it in the lotus, there was only a puff sound, and a huge hole was drilled at the bottom of the lotus platform. Qinglian's lotus trap technique was taught to her by Master Shangshan himself when she came out of Lang Yuan Cave. He also gave her a 6th grade lotus seed as a gift, which enabled her to fully understand this technique in a very short period of time. Was originally used to deal with Musun, but because Lily accidentally disrupted the situation, this move was not used on Musun, but was used on Lily. The 6th grade lotus seeds were collected from the Tianqi in the west. The lotus seeds themselves were one level higher than Qinglian. Having obtained such a treasure, Qinglian was even more powerful. She wanted to do something big. When she saw the lily falling, she got into it. After falling into everyone's trap, before I had time to rejoice, I only felt a sharp pain in my heart. She spat out a large mouthful of light green juice with a wow sound. Her originally fair complexion turned green all of a sudden, and her aura suddenly became sluggish. She couldn't even maintain the posture of floating in mid-air, and fell straight to the sea level. Middle. Qinglian, Qian's extremely painful voice rang out. After Qinglian obtained the lotus seeds, she refined them for her own use. The lotus just planted into the sea was grown from lotus seeds. Now the lotus, once it was destroyed, her mind and body were severely damaged, and she was completely confused. Qi-yin's eyes turned red. His heart seemed to have been forcibly cut out. He wanted to run towards Qinglian. The next moment, the dragon that fell into the sea broke through the sea with a crash and jumped up. Its sharp claws caught the dying Qinglian in his fingers. The tip shoots straight into the sky. Qinglian was already in a state of confusion because the lotus was destroyed. At this moment, Bai Hei grabbed her again, and she couldn't help but rise into the air. Qi-yin stretched out his hand to pull her, but he was a step too slow. Lily turned into a dragon and grabbed Qinglian into the air. Looking at Qi-yin below, who was extremely anxious, he also flew into the clouds at the same time. However, because his speed was not faster than that of his race, which was born to soar into the clouds and mist, it was still a step slower. There was a soft sound of puff, and Qinglian's body was like a fragile piece of paper, easily torn apart by Lily's claws. Qi-yin's eyes were about to burst when he saw this scene, and he grabbed the purple bow in his hand without thinking. He pulled out the bowstring and attacked Lily like he was going crazy. As soon as the green lotus was torn into pieces, green lotus juice dripped down, and her body turned into lotus fragments, slowly falling down. Obstacle. Master Shangshan cursed a few words in his mouth, shook his sleeves, and threw a green lotus seed towards the spot where Qinglian had just been torn apart by the lily. Go. When the lotus seeds were thrown in, a ball of faint green light quickly emerged from Qinglian's original body and flew towards the lotus seeds. Lily's huge original body saw Qinglian's in mid-air. After collecting Qinglian's soul, he went to Shanzhenren. Rushing forward, without thinking, he twisted his waist and turned into a human form again. He formed seals with his hands at a faster speed. The water curtain blocked the outstretched hands of King Lianzi and Shang Shanzhenren. Lianzi hit the water curtain and could not be moved. It broke open and bounced back hard. Master Shangshan's hand touched the water curtain. In anger, he destroyed it with the Qincan flag. Lotus has been caught in Lily's palm. You shouldn't die, but you can't die anyway. Lily shook her head, closed her palms hard, and suddenly a painful scream came from her palms. Green juice flowed out of her palm. The Qinglian who lost her lotus seeds and could not die, and even lost her lotus heart, could still be resurrected by heaven in various ways. At this time, the soul of the lotus seed in Lily's palm was extinguished. The Queen of Heaven is gone, God. Your arrangements are in chaos again and again. I'm afraid if a few more changes are made, even you will be confused. If you don't come out now, how long will you have to wait? Lily suddenly said. Qian he rushed toward Lily crazily, but Qinglian died in front of him. This time, he was no longer the ignorant child he was before. After studying with Master Shangshan for many years, he already knew that Qinglian was beaten by Lily just now. The spirit and soul are all destroyed. I am afraid that even if Delugo Immortal is still alive now, it will be difficult to resurrect the soul even if the soul is scattered. Qi-yin was so angry that he lost his mind. The purple bow no longer had any effect. He simply took the bow and knocked at Lily. All the magic weapons around him greeted Lily. She suddenly felt bored, her legs turned into tails, and she swept away with all her strength. These magic weapons were smashed to pieces. To be able to withstand the attack of a 6th grade lotus, and to be able to attack under the siege of so many people, this is definitely not just a dragon girl with 100,000 years of cultivation. Master Shangshan looked at Yali fiercely. Qian had already rushed towards Lily like crazy. His purple bow was made of unknown materials. It was full of spirituality. It did not cause much damage when it hit Lily, but it was somewhat. Lily was annoyed by the pain, so she simply reached out and grabbed it, breaking it into two pieces. With a bang, the broken bow let out a cry, and most of the spiritual energy in his body was reduced, and he was thrown into the sea by Lily. Chi Yin, who was going crazy, was caught by Lily. He seemed to be so stimulated by Qing Lian's death that he didn't even care about his own life and death. When he was caught, he summoned the Feng Shen Bang to face Lily without thinking. Smash it! Lily reached out and strangled his neck, making a gesture to kill him. The frightened and nervous faces of Master Shangshan and others seemed to freeze for a moment, and a sigh suddenly sounded. Everything has been destined for a long time, why bother? Yours birth was meant to solve all of this. The devil was born because of Pangu. In order to balance the rules of heaven, something that can destroy the devil will naturally be born at the same time. All things in the world are mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. To be continued. P.S. I struggle on the edge of depravity every day, and I really want to write a request for leave, but every day I know that there are little cuties waiting for me, so even if I hang my head on the beam and stab my husband, I still have to do it. Say it after you finish the word. This story was not easy to write. Due to the layout, some things could not be developed, which is a bit regretful. Please give me monthly votes. Please hurry up for the last 2 days. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1114. All things are interdependent, just like there is an antidote next to a poisonous snake. Yin and yang must be reconciled and neither can be missing. When something appears, something will appear that can restrict it. This is the law. Pangu gave birth to his inner demon, so he shed tears and waited for the day when the game would be solved. All of this was already doomed, but God had not planned that the chess pieces in that game would suddenly become disobedient. In the rough sea, a young man appeared out of thin air, with an indifferent expression. This is the rule. Rules? Who made the rules? The young man transformed by Tiandao was mediocre and could not feel the huge strength and cultivation, but he was inexplicably feared. He couldn't tell his gender or age. He looked around like a friend he had met a long time ago in his memory. He couldn't estimate his age. As Chi Yin said at the beginning, he didn't know whether he was in his 20s or 30s, or whether he was already in his 20s or 30s. 40 or 50. But he gives people a different feeling than ordinary people. When he stands there, he represents Tao, the top rules and regulations in the world. Everything in the world is as small as dust in front of him, which makes people dare not look directly into his ageless eyes. Lily is different. I don't know if it's because the original owner has hatred towards the way of heaven, or maybe Lily is not the original soul in this world at all, so Master Shangshan and others were horrified and frightened when they saw this incarnation that represented destiny. At that time, Lily's expression did not change, and she still held Chi Yin firmly in her hand. The conferred God tablet that he originally used to smash Lily was also caught by Lily at this time. The spiritual light on the conferred God tablet flashed, and this artifact had already given birth to spirituality. At this time, he was struggling desperately. He looked like he wanted to escape from Lily's control and rescue his master. It's a pity that because it was caught by Lily, no matter how the aura flashed on its body, it still seemed as if someone had grasped its lifeblood. Unable to escape. Everything in the world has its own destiny. Hearing Lily's question, Tiandao frowned, but he still said such words. You don't have to use these words to trick me. The so-called rules are actually based on strength. If the dragon girl in the plot is not as skilled as others, she will naturally have to be insulted and die at the hands of Chi Yin many years later. As a chess piece arranged by fate, she completes the mission arranged for her in the rules stated by Tiendeo. The reason why many people are unable to resist fate is not because they don't want to resist, but because they are not strong enough. I just don't want to resist. Why does the fate of all things in the world need to be arranged by heaven? Even if the reason Pangu gave birth to his inner demon that day was to become the co-lord of the three realms in the future, has fate ever thought about whether the person being sacrificed would be willing to do this for his arrangement? Tiendeo stared at Lily indifferently and did not speak again. He seemed like a dummy who would not be angry or angry because of Lily's words. He won't be worried because of her words. He is like an outsider, so indifferent that even the word ruthless cannot be applied to him. The surroundings were quiet. Chi Yin was still struggling desperately. He was still heartbroken because of King Lian's death, but because the list of gods was taken away by Lily, and he was restrained by Lily, there was no way to escape. You have changed a lot of things, even if you just kill Chi Yin. Under the rules, there will still be new ones born in the silence. Chi Yin's breathing was very loud. Tiendeo spoke slowly. Lily listened to him say this. But he laughed. I have already thought about this problem. Tiendeo did not expect that she would say this until he was about to speak again. Lily added, I know that once Chi Yin dies, a new destined person will be born again, and will still chase me, use my body to kill the devil, and achieve this great merit. When Lily said this, Tiendeo didn't know why. For the first time, I began to feel that things were a little out of my control. Although I'm not afraid of these so-called destined people, I don't mind causing you a little trouble. After saying that, Lily paused, raised her eyelids and stared at this young man who seemed to have a different face every time he looked at her. You have to see if the look on your face will still look like this if things get out of your control, and you don't take human life seriously. Kian, you want to use the death of others to achieve your own merits. Now I want you to reap the consequences and let you have a taste of it. When he said this, Lily suddenly put his hand in his hand at an extremely fast speed. The title of the gods she held was returned to Chi Yin, who was struggling. Before Chi Yin could recover, she flicked her fingertips, and a drop of transparent water appeared in her fingertips. The ancient power suddenly appeared on the sea surface. Spread up. Tiendeo, who had a calm face for the first time, showed a serious look on his face. He walked towards Lily, and in the blink of an eye his body turned into a phantom, getting closer and closer, but Lily was always one step faster than him, and the drops of water on her fingertips got closer and closer. It grew bigger and bigger, until Chi Yin, who had not yet reacted, was trapped in it. Before Tiendeo touched her hand, a crack suddenly appeared in the air. Lily held her hand, and the water wrapped around Chi Yin's body. Zhu seemed to feel some inexplicable attraction and was quickly sucked into the crack. The incident happened between lightning and flint, and the crack quickly closed again. Everyone only saw Chi Yin's panicked eyes when he was wrapped in the water. The next moment, Chi Yin and his breath disappeared completely. Tiendeo's face turned gloomy in an instant, and thunder flashed around his head, as if there was a roar coming from mid-air. Where have you sent Chi Yin? The sky is getting darker and darker, and thunder and lightning are flying in the sky like a huge dragon with its teeth and claws. Tiendeo's originally calm and indifferent face was no longer as calm as before. The sea surface made waves out of thin air. This huge power of heaven made people feel scared from the bottom of their hearts. Many monks in Kyushu had not died in the sea wrath created by Musun before. The hands, now under the power of God, were tightly pressed together, with a look of helplessness on their faces. Master Shangshan looked a little flustered when he saw this scene. He couldn't help but ask, but no one answered him at this moment. Tiendeo said in a muffled voice, "Release Qian." When he spoke, his voice stopped. It came from his body, but from all directions, gathering invisible pressure that made people breathless. Lily sneered, "The great road has no mercy, and the heaven has no joy, anger, or sorrow. How can you get angry?" "Let him out," Tiendeo repeated again. His voice couldn't help but reach everyone's ears through the muffled thunder in the sky. Many people couldn't stand this kind of power, and many who were less powerful were under this pressure. There is already a hint of showing his true form. However, due to her cultivation of the Tao Te Ching, Lily's strength is much deeper than that of ordinary demons. In addition, she has Pangu's spiritual power in her body, so she is not deeply affected. Now I have sealed Qian and the conferred gods list in my void. There is no conferred gods list in Kyushu, and there is no Qian. I want to see how you can justify yourself again. When Lily said this, she finally couldn't help but laugh. Get up, without the destined person, how can you unify the three realms? And Qi Yin, the man who was destined to become the emperor of the three realms, is still alive and has been canonized with the list of gods. She said every word. Tiandao's body became more transparent, and the sky became darker. The rumbling thunder gathered together in mid-air, the sky was gloomy and black like thick ink, and the thick lightning was like a galloping beast. After gathering together, boom, a loud bang. Suddenly it split straight down. The target is exactly where Lily is. When the monks in Zhuzhou saw this scene, they all just hated their parents for losing 2 legs, and they hurriedly ran away. The figure of Heavenly Dao in the mid-air had long since disappeared. When the lightning that looked like a huge pillar fell, each of the creatures in Kyushu offered their own magic weapons. Even the former Supreme Master quickly turned into a black dot and disappeared in the mid-air. Lily's eyes fell on a group of monks in Langyuan Cave. Seeing that these people were about to run away, she transformed into a dragon and knocked down one of them, who originally flew into the sky with a flick of her tail. The man was hit by the dragon's tail. It hit hard. He spat out a large mouthful of blood with a wow sound in his mouth, and couldn't help but fall towards the huge lightning. In the silver lightning, Yuli's panicked face appeared in Lily's eyes. The revenge of the past is now avenged. The next moment, lightning enveloped Yali. His body and soul were both struck by lightning and destroyed. The reason why I didn't kill him in the first place was not because I didn't want to repay my hatred, but because the time hadn't come yet. At this time, no one in Langyuan Cave came to save Yali. Everyone ran away for their lives in the critical moment. After Lily turned into a dragon, the lightning was still chasing her desperately. There was a loud boom, and when the lightning hit her, its scales were blown away. This kind of pain was bone-piercing, but Lily could bear it. She flexibly dodged in the thunder and lightning, and sneered, "Without the conferred god list, the conferred god battle arranged in your rules will not happen. Your destined person is not dead, so there cannot be a new destined person born." When Lily spoke, the thunder became much denser. Some of them escaped her, and some hit her. The dragon scales mixed with blood dropped on the sea surface. "So you are angry, but some people died of the law of heaven without touching the cause and effect. It must be troublesome for you." The more she spoke, the more dangerous the lightning aura became, and Lily was not afraid. "Even if I die and Qian is sealed in the secret mirror, you won't be able to find him. If you want to unify the 9 provinces continent again, find someone to kill the devil and gain merit, and Qi Yin will not die. This destined person's name will always be occupied by Qi Yin. What's more, if he misses this era, Qi Yin's cause and effect is equivalent to missing it. Even if Lily releases him again 100 years later, he will never encounter this good time again. There is only one chance. If Qi Yin misses it, the path to the Emperor of Heaven will never be realized again. This is what Tiandao is most angry about. Lily's actions have broken his rules. If he wants to re-establish such an order, it means that all the rules he has set in the past need to be reshuffled. Then he is still. If it's not him, then no one can tell. As for Qi Yin, doesn't he enjoy killing people to achieve his own merits? He now occupies the title of a destined person. If heaven wants to arrange a destined person again in the future, Qi Yin will definitely die. Because if Qi Yin does not die, the next new destined person will not be born. This is also one of the rules. so the existence of Qi Yin is similar to that of Dragon Girl in the plot and Mu Sungziang now. He will become a key to the mission and be killed. The list of gods that should have belonged to him will also be re-established after his death. The destined person has to go. I wonder what Qi Yin's expression would be like if he knew all this. Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but let out a dragon's roar, turning the messenger who was supposed to complete the mission into the one who was tasked. The wind and water will turn, and in the next time, Qi Yin will be sealed in the outer sea. Tasted the loneliness and helplessness of the dragon girl at that time, and was finally killed. I believe that Longnu will be satisfied with this result. Yali, who hurt her and took away her foundation, died under the rules of heaven, and his soul was scattered. Qi Yin, who killed her, will now live in a long period of unwillingness and resentment like her. He will watch helplessly as he has the list of gods and cannot use it. His pain will last until the next Qi Yin comes again. Appear and end it for him, tit for tat. Really unhappy with retribution. At this point in the mission, the original owner's wish has ended. Now, even if the law of heaven kills her, Lily is not afraid at all. She meanders on the sea surface, and the huge thunder and lightning forms a dense power grid to wrap it up. She was not afraid of death, but on the contrary, there was nothing God could do against her. The consequences of God's power were too terrible. The originally huge ice floes on the sea in the bitter cold land of the far north were split into pieces. Many mountains were destroyed by this power of heaven. Many creatures died in the wrath of the sky. When Tiandao came back to his senses, he realized what he had done. At this time, the thunder and lightning gradually decreased. Lily had no weakness, and there was nothing heaven could do about it. The thunder and lightning slowly subsided. However, many Dead Sea people floated up on the sea level, and the entire Kyushu continent seemed to have been reshuffled. When Lily returned to the land with scars, she did not return to her own sea area, but returned to her homeland. It was my temporary residence when I was in Kyushu continent. Every once in a while, Tianli will track her, probably trying to force her to hide in the secret realm. She is the only owner of the outer sea, and she needs to find a way to open the secret realm in a short time. Only Lily taking the initiative to open it is the fastest. The magic drop is taking shape faster and faster. There was more and more demonic energy in Jiuzhu continent, and Tiandao's several intense attacks made Lily feel that he had begun to become angry. The people in Langyuan cave are looking for her everywhere, and the situation in Kyushu continent is now like this. Many monks had witnessed it with their own eyes that day, and now the devil's surrender is almost taking shape. Once it takes shape, it becomes more and more difficult to deal with. The current punishment of Heavenly Dao on the Kyushu continent is also caused by Lily, and the source of the matter is Lily. As long as Qi Yin is found, he can find Qi Yin. As long as Qi Yin is found, heaven will naturally no longer punish Jiuzhu continent. As long as Qi Yin has Lily's body, he can destroy Mojang, killing two birds with one stone. But as time goes by, the demonic energy outside the canyon has become less intense than before. This does not mean that the danger of the demon has become less, but it proves that he is about to take shape and will be more difficult to deal with in the future. Lily was still not found. It is ridiculous to say that back then, the demon that everyone was clamoring for to be defeated and the phantom of Pangu's inner demon that Master Shangshan wanted to eliminate has now become a life-saving thing for everyone. Heavenly Dao can destroy all living things on the Jiuzhu continent, but it cannot personally take action against the things destined to exist in the rules. Demonic surrender is not only the phantom of Pangu's inner demon, carrying the power of this great god, but also because it is a destined thing that should not be destroyed by heaven, so heaven has nothing to do with it. Just like the way of heaven itself said, all things are interdependent, even if it is to formulate the rules of destiny, it will eventually have its nemesis. After the people of Jiuzhu continent discovered this, they quickly hid in the area of the canyon. By the time Lily came to this canyon, it was already almost time for the devil to take shape. Muffled thunder flashed in the sky, but it could not fall. Master Shangshan and other monks from Jiuzhu continent were hiding in the canyon. The evil energy had begun to restrain itself. When it takes shape, even if Pangu is reborn, it may not be able to eliminate it easily. There was a thunderstorm outside, and the remaining monks divided their territories into different sects and stayed quietly. The canyon of Nyida was extremely quiet, and no one spoke. Someone looked up and suddenly pointed out, "Look, someone is coming over there." The creatures in Jiuzhu like Tianwei have already experienced it. Many spirits who have been cultivating for many years were buried in the mainland due to lightning disasters. There were so many casualties, and now someone actually said that there was someone outside the canyon. After hearing this, many people felt dumbfounded, but they all turned their heads to look. They were really surprised when they saw that there was indeed a figure slowly approaching in the rain and fog, but because of the heavy rain, they couldn't see it clearly. Master Shangshan felt something was wrong, and stood up immediately. The figure was getting closer and closer. He did not hold an umbrella, but the raindrops seemed to be under her control and could not fall on her at all. They were 2 feet away from her body. When it was 3 inches away, it bounced away. She was wearing a fine gauze dress, and when she walked out hazy, it seemed like a scene from an ink landscape painting. "It's her." When Master Shangshan said these 2 words, it seemed as if they were bitten out from his teeth. His words broke the silence. Everyone stood up involuntarily and slowly gathered together. "It's the dragon girl. How dare she show up?" Now people all over Jiuzhu continent are looking for her, but the dragon girl takes the initiative to appear. As Lily gets closer and closer, the rain gradually stops, the muffled thunder in the air becomes much quieter, and many people instinctively take out their own magic weapon. Suddenly a voice sighed, "The devil's surrender is about to take shape." The originally strong demonic aura around him seemed to have disappeared. Once the demon descended into shape, what else in the world could control him? As a thing left over from the Pangu period, it was so huge when it was not formed. Now that it is formed, even if Pangu is still alive, he and Pangu are already 2 independent individuals, so what can be done to him? To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1115. The demonic energy that was originally released in the valley quickly restrained itself. As soon as the speaker finished speaking, many people didn't care about Lily at all, and instinctively turned their heads and sat down cross-legged again. From a distance, you can clearly see that a formation has been set up in the entire valley. Many people are sitting according to the formation. The person who just spoke was Saint Ancestor Mang, whom Lily had once had a relationship with. Zhejiang, this time due to sudden changes, the destined person chosen by heaven was trapped in the outer sea. Without the destined person, the devil can no longer be killed. As time goes by, the devil is about to take shape. Even if Qi Yin is released by Lily at this time, it will not be easy to destroy Qi Yin. It is precisely because of this accident that even a powerful person like Meng Jie, who has reached the Saint Ancestor level, cannot help but get involved in this matter, trying to suppress the demon. The spiritual power of these monks was input into the formation. When Lily got closer, she discovered that the formation blocked the devil's energy. In other words, what these people did was to prevent the devil from recycling the devil's energy and casting it with magic power. Achieve the physical body. It's funny to say that these people worked so hard that day because they were afraid that the demon's spiritual power would leak out. In order to prevent the demonic energy from leaking out, the original Master Shangshan even destroyed the Luhi Pearl, one of the 3 treasures of Langyuan Cave. But now he has to stop Mo Zhang from recovering the demon energy. "How dare you come?" Lily walked closer and closer, and the thunder in the sky gradually stopped. A monk in Langyuan Cave stared at Lily with red eyes, looking furious. Everyone in the formation was blushing, and the demonic energy was surging. Even though these powerful monks tried their best, they still couldn't stop the wisps of demonic energy from pouring into the valley. "Why don't you dare to come?" Lily glanced at the Langyuan cave disciple who was speaking, but she was not furious. But this glance made the disciple dare not look directly at her and turned his head away. "Guard your mind and unite your soul," Master Shangshan shouted sternly as soon as he finished speaking. The speed of the return of the demonic energy became faster, and the originally gloomy sky seemed to have had those gloomy clouds taken away in an instant. Even a mortal could see this change with the naked eye. The next moment, Meng Zhe's face turned pale. Big changes. Before anyone could react, he had already shaken his head. "It's too late." There was silence in the canyon at first, and then a disciple from Hongliang Mountain suddenly changed his face and his eyes turned red. The magic weapon he held in his hand rushed towards his fellow disciples. The one who was beaten shouted, "Junior brother Chan, you are crazy." The originally neat formation suddenly became a mess. Seeing that something was not going well, Master Shangshan quickly soared into the clouds and missed towards Meng and Zhejiang. Lily saw a grey shadow walking among the crowd. The grey shadow couldn't see its face clearly. She could only vaguely see a shadow. Her mission ended today. The demon surrender that had never appeared in the plot was now, but it suddenly took shape because of her intervention. The rules of heaven have been broken. After seeing it with my own eyes today, I'm afraid it's time for Dragon Girl to rest in peace. The grey shadow seemed to feel her gaze and looked towards her. Obviously this shadow had no face or eyes, but Lily could feel that it was paying attention to her. A bad premonition came to her heart. Somehow, Lily suddenly remembered many things that she thought, many past events that have long been forgotten. She still remembered that when she first entered the mission, she died in a car accident and Li Yangzi saved her. Gave her a chance to live. To do this she needs to move between tasks. She thought of the many people and things she had experienced in the mission. She thought of Ye Changjin, Rong Li, the many original owners who asked her to help fulfill their wishes, and she thought of the Dragon Girl. Thinking of Mu Suan, Lily suddenly felt a little angry. She survived. But her life now is equivalent to living for others. Why is it that everyone has a wish that needs others to fulfill, but no one has thought about whether she has a wish that needs others to fulfill? She has given so much, but she is always living for other people's lives. In fact, she also hopes that someone can fulfill her wish for her, and she does nothing. This inexplicable feeling of anger was so strong that Lily was almost caught off guard. The moment the resentment and rage surged in her heart, she felt an urge to destroy the world. She could hardly control her desire to transform into a dragon, but the next moment Lily quickly realized that something was wrong with her. Her mental power was too strong, and after experiencing so many tasks, Lily's willpower was also stronger than that of ordinary people. You must be much more determined. After living for so many years, even if you have not made any progress, you should not suddenly become so angry. Lily knew she had been hit at the first moment, and she forced herself to calm down, even though she was already so angry that she almost couldn't control herself. It should be the work of Pangu's inner demon, Phantom Demon Zhang. As the demonic side in the heart of the great god who split the world, Demon Zhang originally has the energy to control people's hearts. In addition, it has become a trend in recent years and can easily attacking people's hearts is nothing outlandish. Thinking back to the sudden and inexplicable attack by the Hongliangshan disciples, Lily knew better. She did not do anything to hurt herself to calm herself down. It was of no use. She just let the memories flash through her heart over and over again. Let it go too much, watch too much, and gradually become numb. She has experienced so many tasks, and it is actually necessary to control her emotions. If she would be angry and sad every time due to the anger of the tasks, she would probably have collapsed long ago after going through so many tasks. Why, a thought suddenly rang in my heart, as if it was a question of my own, why can you be so calm? This should be the phantom demon of the heart that has descended. It is everywhere and can attack the softest and truest parts of people's hearts. Regardless of their level of cultivation, there is no defense against it. It is indeed terrifying. No wonder Master Shang Shen and others are so afraid of it. At this moment, Lily was almost certain that the sudden voice in her heart was the devil. She became even calmer. You feed on resentment and darkness. If, like these monks from the 9 provinces continent, they develop negative emotions such as resentment and anger after being invaded by the demon lord, those things will become the demon lord's food, and they will also be controlled by it. People have 7 emotions and 6 desires. The same goes for monks. Even the aloof Deluo Jinxian, who has not reached the stage of killing 3 corpses and becoming a saint, will not be able to be neither sad nor happy. The point where there is no pain and no hatred. Why are you so calm? You have so many memories. That thought was like a stubborn child who would not give up until he achieved his goal. Many memories flashed through Lily's eyes faster. Among them, Ye Changjin once scared her, and Li Yangzi made her feel safe and reliable. She relied on him and trusted him. In her long life, he seemed to be her partner who could move forward hand in hand. There was nothing worthwhile about this relationship. Terrible, so the memories became more about people and things that made Lily afraid, such as Ye Changjin. But Ye Changjin has been taken back by Li Yangzi, and Lily will never be afraid because of the past. These fears she had had were a reason to make her stronger. Therefore, when Ma Jiang reminded her of Ye Changjin several times, but it had no effect at all, it obviously had no intention of using this old method again. Yes, it reminded Lily of many memories from the mission, and the memory suddenly flashed. A young man stood up slowly from the inn and wrote the word wrongly in her palm. Ma Jiang discovered that Lily, who had been indifferent to the memories, suddenly began to change. It perked up, and Lily saw more. She dreamed that she was back at the foot of Panlong Mountain and met the young man in the inn who wrote the word wrongly on her palm, telling her to remember his name. She saw wrongly emerging from the thick fog. As I walked forward, I found that I remembered every bit of my time with it. He didn't hide his identity when they first met. He said his name was Wrong Li. He wrote words in his hands, taught himself the Tao Te Ching, and stayed with him throughout his life. He had begged to allow himself to take a bite. He had been puzzled when he refused. When he heard that he liked to be a human being, he waited for thousands of years to learn how to be a human being. The memory suddenly returned to that coffin. The girl and the zombie were lying in the same coffin. However, because of Rong Li's blessing, she was not harmed by it. The two lived together day and night, and she taught it Tao Te Ching, watch it gradually grow into a human being day by day, and finally die in the battle with the Taoist priests in order to save him. Lily saw the 2 encounters between herself and Rong Li, and was filled with emotions. At this moment, Mo Jiang found that her originally calm mood suddenly began to change, and she couldn't help but work harder. Those vivid memories appeared in front of Lily, and she met Rong Li again. Many years later, Rong Li left with her from the ancient tomb. The two returned to Panlong Mountain, and he returned the power of Tao Te Ching to himself, saying that he wanted to back to the beginning, when she was powerless and unable to do anything. Seeing Rong Li disappear in front of her, when she thought about it again, she still felt a faint pain in her heart. Resent, the thought in her heart rang again, and she felt that her mood was getting unstable, as if she was bewitched. Do you regret that you didn't accompany it? Why should I hate? Ma Jiang actually used such a method that it should not have used in the first place, and began to seduce himself to feel angry. A tear rolled down from the corner of Lily's eyes, but her lips were slightly raised. I should feel happy. Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to relieve the scene of meeting Rong Li again. Because of Mo Jiang's special ability, she seemed to have met Rong Li again, and she was only satisfied and moved, even though she knew that these are just your own memories. When the thought in his heart heard Lily say this, He paused for a while and didn't reply. But those memories no longer replayed, and the feeling that affected Lily was gone. She opened her eyes, and there were dark clouds outside the canyon, and thunder was flashing in the sky. Many Josu monks had already fought together, and many people were killed. His eyes were red, and magic weapons were coming out frequently, as if the other person was his father-killing enemy, and he didn't even care about his life. In the center of the formation, in addition to Mengzhe who had achieved Genkuo, Master Shangshan was also sweating profusely and trembling all over. Suddenly Lily saw a shadow flash in front of her. The shadow stood in front of her. It had no face or eyes, but she could feel the shadow staring at her. How is it possible? How can it not be affected? Such thoughts rang in her heart again. Ma Jiang was like a child who refused to admit defeat. Its originally incorporeal figure suddenly began to become fuller, starting from the feet. Moving on to the legs and body, a figure in white clothes gradually began to take shape. Lily frowned, and the thunder in the sky became louder. Mengzhe, who had been sitting cross-legged and meditating, suddenly sighed, opened his eyes, stood up slowly, and walked towards Lily. The devil has taken shape. He seemed to be chatting with a friend he hadn't seen for many years. This mess obviously took shape because of Lily, dragging down this holy ancestor who had attained enlightenment and achieved the golden body. At this time, there was no trace of anger or dissatisfaction on Mengzhe's face. Instead, he asked Lily gently, "My fellow Taoist, who has cultivated to the heavens, can you work with me, the poor Taoist, to subdue the demon and seal it? The way of heaven has its own rules. Mo Jiang is destined to die at the hands of Qi Yin. But now that Qi Yin is in trouble, no one can destroy Mo Jiang. The most important thing is that the most advantageous moment has been missed, and the most he can do is destroy him. Its seal prevents it from harming the world, and it can no longer be completely eliminated like in the plot. Even if a new Lord of the Three Realms appears in the future, the merits required to become a saint will no longer be killing demons." When Lily heard Mengzhe's request, she couldn't help but laugh. "Why should I work with you to surrender and seal the devil? Although Lily's purpose of revenge for the original owner has been achieved, things are now out of the control of heaven." But she wasn't even remotely interested in sealing the demon's surrender. If the devil is not surrendered and sealed, this world will no longer be the world. Mengzhe's expression gradually became serious, and he said, "When the rules are seriously confused, it is very likely that heaven will rewrite the rules." This is similar to what Lily originally thought. If it were just some innocuous little things that escaped the control of heaven, it might adjust these laws in other ways. For example, in the plot, Qian killed the dragon girl and subdued the demon. In this case, after Lily entered the mission, the plot changed. The young man Yali did not rape the dragon girl to obtain the spiritual root. The dragon girl was no longer powerless to fight back when facing Qi Yin, but became the person who changed Qi Yin's destiny. Tiandao, after discovering that enlightenment could not be achieved by killing oneself, Musun appeared in this world. It can be said that Musun is one of the loopholes created by Tiandao to fill this slight change. In layman's terms, Musun is equivalent to another substitute for the dragon girl. If the loopholes in the rules can be changed, heaven can make countless Musun lay. This is the power of fate. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1116. Once the loopholes are too big and related to the main rules, the law of heaven can no longer modify them. Then naturally there are bigger rules above the law of heaven, which are the laws of heaven and earth, which is what Meng and Zhejiang call reformulation. Rules. Heaven destined the three realms to be in chaos. The phantom of Pangu's inner demon appeared. Qi Yin was supposed to eliminate it, but Lily imprisoned the most critical figure, Qi Yin, so that no one could contain the phantom of the inner demon. Faced with such a serious situation, the mistake, even with the ability of relying on the way of heaven, is still not enough to correct, so it has caused chaos in the world, and it is very likely that there will be a rebirth. What is reformulation of rules? Lily asked, and Mengzhe's expression gradually became cautious. The so-called reformulation of rules means that the laws of heaven and earth will erase the mistakes and reformulate new laws, he said. After saying this, he paused. In other words, once things are out of control, you are wrong, I am wrong, the devil is wrong, everything here is wrong. It is precisely because of such serious consequences, therefore, even though Meng and Zhejiang have achieved positive results, they still fall into this muddy water. We will all die then, including Qi Yin, and heaven and earth will be reborn. After he finished speaking, seeing Lily's silence, he thought she did not understand the serious consequences of the matter, so he spoke to remind. The so-called rebirth means that the heaven and the earth will come together again. It is possible that after countless tens of thousands of years, another Pangu will wake up again, split the heaven and the earth, and leave phantoms again, Lily said to Mengzhe at the beginning. She didn't care, her mission had been completed and she wasn't afraid of death. She was not worried whether Qi Yin would die or whether the Kyushu continent would be destroyed. Her mission would have been completed by then anyway. But she understood what Mengzhe meant. If she did not help Mengzhe eliminate the phantom of the inner demon, in order to fill in the loophole that she had messed up, the heaven and earth would return to their original state again, and then the scene would repeat when Pangu opened the sky and split the earth. Leaving behind the phantom, Pangu shed tears before his death and gave birth to a new dragon girl. After an unknown number of thousands of years, another Qian will appear again and kill the dragon girl again to achieve the correctness of the rules. In other words, even now Lily has completed the tragedy of this dragon girl. The tragedy of the next dragon girl will still happen in a cycle until the matter is resolved. In fact, Lily's mission has been completed this time. Even if the rules of heaven and earth are now re-established, a new dragon girl is raped again and used as one of the props to be conquered. Logically speaking, all this has nothing to do with Lily. It doesn't matter anymore. But Lily hesitated a little when she thought of the pain the original owner felt when he was raped and his foundation was taken away, the discomfort of being trapped in the outer sea for hundreds of years, and the despair when he was killed by Qian. She has a colder temperament, but she is not a bad person. She does not want to watch another tragedy happen just to complete the task. If she can solve the pain of another dragon girl with her own efforts, then maybe she should do that. While the two were talking, the demon in front of Lily gradually took shape. He has transformed into a human and has a real body. He is naked, but his appearance is exactly the same as Rong Li in his memory. The moment Lily saw him, the pupils shrank slightly. How could this be? The devil descended into a human being. He actually became Rong Li. She remembers Rong Li's appearance clearly, including the scene when the zombie in Panlong Mountain was cultivating as a human, and when he disappeared into her arms. She remembered his voice and appearance. The person in front of her now was Rong Li. Lily was confused for a moment, and a vortex began to form in the sky, with purple thunder surging in it. Mo Zhang did not open his eyes. Mengzhe was already a little anxious. Fellow Taoist. Okay, Lily nodded without hesitation. She had already thought about what she was going to do in almost an instant. What should I do? You drip essence and blood into its forehead before it opens its eyes, Mengzhe spoke hastily. He stretched out his hand to draw in the void, and the drawn mana condensed into a substantial golden light, flashing into the devils descending in the body. Lily stretched out her hand, bit off her finger, and touched Mo Jiang's forehead. The person whose eyelashes were trembling slightly as if he was about to wake up suddenly began to struggle. The drop of blood was half hidden and half lost in Mo Jiang's white as jade. On his forehead, he seemed to be struggling with all his strength, trying to force out the drop of blood. Fellow Taoist, use the ancient power to penetrate it into its body, thunder roared above the head, and Mengzhe's words were almost drowned by the thunder. Lily gritted her teeth, and the ancient power traveled inside her body. She used her spiritual power to drain the essence. The blood was forced into Mo Jiang's body. At this time, Lily couldn't care less about whether it would hurt herself. She couldn't let the rules come back again. Apart from the fact that she didn't want the tragedy of Dragon Girl to happen again, the most important thing was that she thought the demon in front of him might be Rong Li's predecessor. Rong Li's origin is too inexplicable. It has been searching for itself. It doesn't know who it is or where it comes from. The demon in front of me looks exactly like Rong Li later. I don't know if it's because it saw the memory in his heart, so it transformed into Rong Li's appearance, or because it looked like this in the first place. It is very likely that it became Rong Li later, but Lily just guessed that it might be Rong Li. If it really is Rong Li, then as long as I seal it, it will no longer have natural enemies, and no one will come to kill him. Qi Yin is sealed by himself, and if this time is missed, it will have no other opponents except the rules. It can sleep after being sealed. It can sleep until someone discovers it many years later and refines it into a corpse. When it meets you, it will wake up again and wake up with another consciousness. Regardless of whether the cause or effect came first, regardless of whether the demon fell to Rong Li or not, Lily had to gamble on the chance she had guessed in her heart. How could she bear to see this demon who looked exactly like Rong Li destroyed by the rules of heaven and earth, and when he reappeared, he was killed by another Qi Yin without even having a body. So in just that moment, Lily decided to seal it. A large amount of essence and blood poured into Mo Jiang's forehead in an endless stream. He struggled to wake up from the beginning, and gradually became calm. Mengzhe gritted his teeth and drew symbols on his back. The energy gathered in the sky seemed to be able to swallow everything. The whirlpool slowly dispersed as Mo Jiang was sealed. He was like a sleeping prince, waiting for the princess with the right key to wake him up. Most of the ancient power in Lily's body has been drained away. She has lost a lot of essence and blood, and can hardly maintain her human form. A dragon's tail has appeared on her lower body. Ma Jiang stood quietly between Lily and Mengzhe with his eyes closed. Lily stretched out her hand to touch him. His face was as white as jade, and the bright red on his head that she had just touched was gone. He looked exactly the same as Rong Li, they were the same person. Lily's heart was agitated and she bit her lips to calm down. Qingming gradually appeared in the sky above the head. Once the devil was sealed, the main mistake was filled up. Then the rules of heaven and earth will regenerate ways to correct this mistake. As Lily thought before, many years later, if a destined person is needed again, different crises will reappear, and then new destiny ones will emerge. Find the outer sea area, kill Qi Yin in the sea area, seize the list of gods in his hand, and unify the three realms. On behalf of the common people of Zhuzhou, I would like to thank my fellow Taoist. Mengzhe nodded to Lily, but Lily didn't seem to hear it. Mengzhe didn't take it seriously either. This matter is over. He shouldn't have intervened in this incident. Now if there is no rebirth situation, he should leave Kyushu continent. Lily picked up Mo Jiang's body and left this place. She searched all over the Kyushu continent and built a resting place for him according to the coffin of Rong Li's favorite home in her memory. Mo Jiang put on his shroud and placed himself in his cave. Accompanying him, who is sealed in the coffin, every day. I don't know how many years later, a young Taoist priest who called himself Master Blood Bee appeared outside the cave. It was not dead yet. This Blood Bee was really blessed with great luck. Zhuzhou suffered so much destruction back then, and it was still able to survive. Alive. After hearing Lily's words allowing it to enter, the Blood Bee entered the cave. When it first met Lily, it was just a dying bee. Unexpectedly, after such a long meeting, it had turned into a human form. Now that Zhuzhou is in chaos, the disciples want to worship under the Taoist leader's knees and become his disciples. It saw the coffin in the cave. During the Battle of Zhuzhou, when the world was about to be reborn, Lily and the saint ancestor of Meng and Zhejiang sealed the demon's surrender, and in the end the saint ancestor without a trace, Lily disappeared with Mojang. No matter how stupid the blood bee was, he knew that the person lying in the coffin was probably Mojang. Kyushu today is almost the same as it was hundreds of thousands of years ago, and the situation is very depressed. This blood bee can be regarded as being destined to him. Lily originally didn't want to accept him as his disciple, but this blood bee said that it had fulfilled its wish, and it wanted to avenge Lily because of Chi-yin's revenge, so it was willing to listen to Lily's orders. This world doesn't know how many years it can exist, it may be endless, but Lily has a premonition that her stay will not be long. She has been with Mahjong for a long time, and the time she has spent in this mission world has already been. If it goes too long, it will definitely leave at some point. While wrongly waits for another self to appear, it will temporarily need someone to protect it. Maybe it is good to recruit an apprentice to protect it? It has been waiting for you for so many years and has been guarding it for so many years. Now is the time for you to repay it and guard it for the rest of your life. Lily figured this out and didn't refuse Blood Bee anymore. She remembered the Tao Te Ching she had learned, so when she established the sect, she named it Tian De Sect and taught it the Tao Te Ching. Until tens of thousands of years later, the Tian De Sect had many disciples and was astonishingly powerful, surpassing Langyuan Cave. While Hongliang Mountain and Langyuan Cave, which were famous in the past, gradually ceased to exist, Tiandamen became famous. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1117. Although Lily was fighting against Tiandao in this mission, thinking about this mission, she had to admit that some of Tiandao's words made sense. There is indeed a reason for all karma in the world. If Mahjong is really Rong Li's predecessor, then was it because she sealed Rong Li and guarded him for most of his life that Rong Li waited for her all those years later, or was it because she owed him so much that he had to wait for him in this mission? Guard him for the rest of his life. Lily also doesn't know whether the Tao Te Ching of Tiandi sect was passed on to her because Rong Li passed it on, or whether she passed it on to Rong Li because she entered the task first. Causes cause effects, effects cause causes. This question is like which came first, the chicken or the chicken. It was like an egg, she couldn't explain it herself. Just being able to meet Rong Li's predecessor in another mission finally relieved some of the regrets left by Rong Li's departure. When she returned to the starry sky, she felt a little more at ease. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 90, out of 100. Appearance, 95, out of 100. Physical strength, 90, full score of 100. Force, 94, out of 100. Spirit, 91, out of 100. Reputation, 10, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Tiandamen Tao Te Ching, Zone, Southern Territory Gu Technique, Star Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements and Bagua Skills, Proficient, B Control Skills. Charisma, 60, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. Lily didn't take this attribute value seriously at first, but she didn't expect that this time the attribute value had changed greatly. In addition to the increase in appearance, martial arts, and mental strength, the reputation has dropped by as much as 10 points. Even if Lily is still not sure about the function of reputation, she feels a little troublesome at this time. As for the increase in the remaining 3 attribute values, it is also worthy of Lily's attention, as the difficulty of the task increases. Lily's attribute values rarely increase significantly anymore. Logically speaking, even if the mission was completed this time, it shouldn't have increased so much. She saw that the appearance value suddenly increased by 2 points. Lily immediately thought of Musun. The tears she left before she died melted into her palms. Lily didn't think much about it at that time, but now when she saw these attribute values, she thought of Musun Chao. Her extraordinary beauty and her words of thanks before her death made Lily guess that it must have something to do with Musun. Only someone as beautiful as Musun could make his appearance value rise by as much as 2 points at once. Lily felt a little moved when she thought of this. Although she took action in the end to prevent Musun from falling into the hands of Chi Yin and others, and saved her from the pain of skinning and bone extraction after her death, but ultimately, Musun's fate was inseparable from her. It was precisely because Lily resisted the arrangements of heaven and tried to repair her mistakes that she caused Musun's pain throughout his life. Although the initiator should be regarded as the rules of heaven. But in the end, this girl generously gave her soul as an attribute value, which still made Lily sigh. Lily was silent for a while, and her eyes gradually calmed down. What surprised her most now was not the change in attribute values, but the skills. As early as in the plot, when she created the Heaven and Earth Gate and taught the Tao Te Ching to the blood bees, Lily had been mentally prepared for the possibility of losing the Tao Te Ching. She once taught the Nine Sun Sutra to others during a mission. A situation occurred that dimmed the light of the Nine Sun Sutra. Originally Lily thought it would be the same this time. However, when she thought about whether to teach, she still chose to pass on the Tao Te Ching. If this devil's surrender is really wrongly, if the Heaven and Earth Gate he created is really the beginning of the Tao Te Ching he learned, Lily has no reason not to pass it on. She hoped that the people of Tiandi sect would become stronger in the future and be able to protect Rongli, who was sealed. When Rongli left, he could give himself his cultivation. I can also teach the Tao Te Ching, but for some reason, when I came back this time, the Tao Te Ching not only did not disappear, but the light turned into gold, and the word zone was imprinted on the Tao Te Ching. Li Yangzi was not in the starry sky, and Lily couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she thought about it. She could only ask him why if she met him on a mission in the future. Thinking of this, Lily calmed down her mood, closed her eyes, and entered the task again. The Qi dynasty was founded 200 years ago, and it was passed down to the 18th generation when the Qi emperor flourished. The Qi emperor was fatuous and lustful, and favored concubine Zheng in his later years. Under the influence of concubine Zheng, he deposed the empress's son Liangyi and replaced him with Liang Lun. For storage. The deposed prince was brave and good at fighting. After being deposed, concubine Zheng was still on guard against her and attempted to kill her several times. Liangyi couldn't bear it anymore and launched an army to rebel. He beheaded concubine Zheng and hung it on the city gate. He imprisoned Emperor Qi in Zhenqi Palace and proclaimed himself emperor. Since then, Qi state has called the former Qi dynasty Southern Qi, while Liangyi later changed its name to Northern Qi. After this chaos, Liangyi killed more than 300 members of the Zheng clan. The heads of the Zheng clan that were chopped off at the entrance to the imperial city of Northern Qi were piled up into a hill. Even after 100 years, everyone still changes their expressions when talking about this incident. The Zheng family was famous in the Qi dynasty for producing many beauties. At first, it was difficult to find a daughter for the Zheng family. After Liangyi experienced the turmoil, he hated the Zheng family deeply, so he left a will before his death. Anyone who is a close relative of the Zheng family, the third generation, was not allowed to be an official, and women who were related to concubine Zheng were not allowed to enter the palace. The methods used by Taizhi Taizhu of the Northern Qi dynasty to bloodbath the palace are still vivid in his mind. With this imperial edict, no one in the civil and military dynasties dared to intercede. After Liangyi passed away, he made his legitimate son Liangzhi the emperor. Due to the chaos in the palace during his childhood, Liangzhi had always been very restrained when it came to women. Before he ascended the throne in his early years, he married the crown princess Lu and gave birth to his legitimate son Lianghe. So he focused all his attention on educating the prince, and didn't care much about women. Mrs. Lu suffered from the disease when she gave birth to her son, and she lingered on the bedside until her legitimate son Liang He was 16 years old, and she forced herself to arrange a marriage for him, and then died. 2 years later, at the request of the Manchu dynasty, Liang Ji married Lu's daughter as his queen. At this time, Liang Ji was already 46, but Lu's daughter was 16 years old, even younger than the prince Liang He. When he was 2 years old, he had a beautiful face. But because Liang Ji had seen his father Liang Yi suffer from a beautiful woman when he was a child, he was not very fond of the newly married young queen. On the contrary, he taught his son better and taught him step by step how to deal with government affairs. 6 months later, Liang died due to overwork. Lu's daughter became the queen mother less than half a year after her marriage. The new emperor Liang He ascended the throne and was named Emperor Yongming. He named the crown prince Zhou as the imperial concubine and respected Lu as the empress dowager. And Lily's identity this time. It was Zhou Beihe who came from a noble family. Zhou has bright eyebrows and bright teeth, and a temperament as light as a hibiscus. She was selected by the royal family at the age of 15 and married into the royal family to become the royal wife. After the marriage, she was very cautious and did not dare to make any mistakes. She became pregnant 1 year after her marriage and gave birth to her legitimate son Liang Muobei, who was originally thought to be her husband's successor. Logically speaking, he should be the most respected mother in the world, and his legitimate son Liang Muobei should be crowned the prince. However, he did not expect that in the end, he was only made a royal concubine and did not sit on the phoenix throne. Unlike the late Emperor Liang Ji, who was not fond of women, Liang He had many women in his harem. He was not a person who would embarrass himself and was busy with official duties. He also knew how to use women to relieve his boredom. There were far more women in his harem than the late Emperor Liang Ji. After he ascended the throne, the 4 concubines already included the Xian and De concubines. There were also many concubines, but he did not have many heirs, except for apart from Liang Muobei, no other woman could give birth to an heir for Emperor Yongming thanks to Zhou Beihe's methods. The young emperor was extraordinarily heroic, and all the women in the palace loved him and wanted to please him. That is why Emperor Yongming's harem fought fiercely. When Zhou Beihe was fighting to the death with other concubines, her only son Liang Muobei was pushed into the pond in the imperial garden and drowned because of a call from the queen mother. Emperor Yongming had only such a son. In anger, she scolded Zhou Beihe for not taking good care of her son, and demoted her to the position of a noble concubine. Her son is Zhou Lily's support throughout her life. She was also connected by blood. When her son died and her husband was untrustworthy and unreliable, Zhou Beihe's sky seemed to collapse. In addition, her status was deprived of her. When she was heartbroken, no one came to comfort her. Instead, the palace everyone sees a good show and adds insult to injury. After this incident, Zhou Beihe turned her original love for Liang He into hatred and hated him to the core. Although she was still a virtuous person on the outside, she was twisted and gloomy in her heart. She began to take revenge on the concubine who killed her son that day, and even wanted to become an enemy of the queen mother. But when Emperor Yongming ascended the throne, because Zhou Beihe was not the queen, the phoenix seal representing the queen was not in Zhou Beihe's hands, so she lost several battles against Empress Dowager Lu. When Zhou Beihe became more and more noisy and the young emperor ignored her, Zhou Beihe's mother entered the palace and taught her daughter a lesson. After listening to her mother's words, Zhou Beihe calmed down a little and she stopped taking action against the concubines in the palace. Half a year later, the noble concubine became pregnant. Zhou Lily took An's son into her lap to feed him, named him Liang Mulan, and devoted all her maternal love to him after losing her son. In the past 15 years, the relationship between Zhou Beihe and Empress Dowager Lu has been endless. Emperor Yongming has many heirs. Zhou Beihe has suppressed the resentment and jealousy in her heart for many years. Now, she does not ask for her husband's favor. What she wanted was future wealth and honor. When Emperor Yongming made Liang Mulan the crown prince, Liang Mulan, who had always been close to her, was alienated from her. He fell in love with an ordinary palace maid and wanted to marry her, but Zhou Beihe naturally did not allow it. She had already for Liang Mulan, he fell in love with his niece Lin. Liang Mulan, who had always been gloomy and introverted, had a big quarrel with Zhou Beihe for the first time. Finally, Zhou Beihe compromised and agreed to marry the Lin family's daughter as his wife and the palace girl as his concubine. After the marriage, Liang Mulan doted on his concubine and neglected his wife. His niece complained several times. Zhou Beihe mentioned it to Liang Mulan several times, but maybe it was because his son was not his own, but Liang Mulan refused to listen to Lily Zhou and talked too much. The already weak relationship between mother and son became even more precarious, and in the end it was completely broken due to the death of the palace maid Liang Mulan liked. On the surface, Zhou Beihe thought that after the death of the palace maid, she would be happy that she would no longer have anyone to seduce Liang Mulan, but Liang Mulan fell in love with her. During the fight with Empress Dowager Lu, the emperor could no longer tolerate Zhou Beihe. When Zhou Beihe focused only on the emperor's harem, the Zhou family was already in dire straits until someone accused the Zhou family of embezzling 2,500 yuan in court. When the evidence was confirmed, the emperor was furious and executed everyone in the Zhou family. Zhou Beihe was deposed as a noble concubine and was given a silk ribbon in Xianfu Palace. Before her death, the palace people shunned her, and many old rivals laughed and laughed behind her back. She begged and wanted to see the emperor, but Liang Mulan suddenly appeared. Zhou Beihe was overjoyed and asked her son to plead with the emperor on her behalf, but Liang Mulan said viciously that he wished she could die. For the death of the palace maid that day, Liang Mulan hated her to the core. She had poisoned her daily meals, and now even if the emperor didn't want her to die, she would never live for more than a year. Unexpectedly, the son she had raised with all her heart would hate her to the core in the end, and her husband, who had been romantically involved with her, would become heartless. All her family members died overnight. In pain, when Zhou Beihe was strangled by the palace guards, she seemed to see the Empress Dowager Lu, who had been her lifelong rival, appear. He looked at her with a sneer and said she should have died long ago. The feeling of being strangled around the neck seemed to still linger in her throat. Lily coughed twice, gasped rapidly, and opened her mouth and eyes. "Wake up, my queen is finally awake," a female voice with a crying sound rang in her ears. Lily's chest kept rising and falling, and her body was already soaked in cold sweat. She gasped for breath, and instinctively reached out to touch her neck, but when she raised her hand, her arm kept shaking and didn't obey her orders at all. The girl who said she was awake before had her hair pulled up, wearing a silver-plated hairpin, and a silver-embroidered plum blossom jacket. She was staring at her with red eyes. "My queen is finally awake." "Where's Mu Bei?" Lily opened her lips. She quickly asked, and the time she entered the mission was too tight, which happened to be around the time of the original owner's son's accident. But hearing her question, the girl in the plum blossom coat suddenly burst into tears. She turned her back and wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "My condolences, the eldest prince has." When Lily heard this, although she had the worst premonition in her heart, she still couldn't help but smile bitterly. Liang Muibei died, and the most significant turning point and blow point in the original owner's life was here. She has received the plot and the memory of the original owner. The original owner was a little sorry for the death of her son. Fortunately, the original owner had not thought about keeping her son alive. She only hoped that she could protect her son for her. If not, then she would avenge her son. Zhou Beihe resented Emperor Yongming for being ruthless and unjust. She also hates Empress Dowager Lu, a bitch, although she did not directly kill her son, but it was because her own son died in the pond in the imperial garden. She hates Liang Mulan, an immature wolf cub, and she also hates herself for not being able to protect her. Living in the Zhou family caused everyone in the Zhou family to be executed. She wanted to protect the Zhou family, take revenge on Queen Mother Lu, kill the person who killed her son, and at the same time make it impossible for Liang Mulan to attack her again. Now that Zhou Beihe's son is dead, the only thing Lily can do for her is to take revenge on the person who killed her son. As for Liang Mulan, after she has taken precautions, she wants him to stop harming her. But it is the easiest. The Zhou family was finally arrested for corruption, and Zhou Lily did not believe this at all. The Zhou family was clean and honest, Zhou's father was loyal to the Qi dynasty, and the entire Zhou family could not have embezzled as much as 5 million taels of silver. When Zhou Beihe was dying, she refused to believe this, thinking that the Zhou family had been murdered, but this amount of money was indeed found from the Zhou family in the end. Unfortunately, Zhou Lily was unable to redress the grievances of the Zhou family in the end, which made her very unwilling. The matter was full of doubts, and Lily decided to investigate further in the future. Anyway, it was too early for the Zhou family to be executed at this time. The most important thing at the moment was still the Queen Mother Lu. The status of the Lu family is higher than that of the Zhou family. The Lu family is a famous noble family that has existed since the founding of the Southern Qi dynasty. The Lu family is famous for loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, and righteousness. Wan, with a generous and benevolent temperament, is a good choice to be a matron. It was precisely because of the strict upbringing of the Lu family and the strict upbringing of their daughters that the late Emperor Liangji married the Lu family when he remarried the Queen Mother. But in Zhou Lily's opinion, Empress Dowager Lu had no relationship with the Lu family's daughter. She was bright and charming, with charming eyebrows. Even the virtuous concubine in Emperor Yangming's harem who was famous for her appearance would probably be inferior to Empress Dowager Lu. Empress Dowager Lu is simply like a strange flower in the Lu family, as if she was born in the wrong child. My queen, you have to take care of yourself." The palace maid Hui knelt in front of Lily and urged her in a plaintive voice. The meaning of the painting is the personal maids who grew up with Zhou Beihe. After Zhou Beihe married into the royal family, the two eldest maids also married into the royal family with her. They combed their hair and were willing to serve her for the rest of their lives. Don't marry. For Zhou Beihe, Shi Qing and Hui tried their best, but when Zhou Beihe had an accident, the two maids were beaten to death with sticks, and their bodies were thrown into a mass grave, leaving no good ending. At this time, Lily heard the painting's comfort. She nodded, pressed the handkerchief to the corners of her eyes, and asked calmly, "How did the eldest prince go today? Tell me everything in detail. Don't hide anything. I don't know why the painting means something." He found that the girl he had been waiting for since childhood suddenly seemed to become cold and dangerous. It was probably because of the murder of his legitimate son, so she was a little stimulated. Hui's back felt cold, and she felt sorry for Zhou Beihe in her heart. Then he responded respectfully, "Yes." In the plot, after her son's accident, Lily Zhou didn't dare to look at her son's face that was soaked in water and turned black and white, and she didn't dare to ask in detail how her son was killed, so that many years later, she knew that there was something fishy about it. But he didn't even dare to think about it. This old injury was so painful that every touch later caused him excruciating pain. Gradually, his personality became distorted and gloomy. Early this morning, after the eldest prince came to pay his respects to the empress, he clamored to go to the Queen Mother. The queen doted on him, so she left him to play with cakes for about half an hour. Recently, the Queen Mother has been busy. About the draft. Aunt Luran called her away. As soon as the Queen Mother left, the eldest prince also disappeared. When he was found again, he was already in the water. Hui was deeply afraid that Lily would go crazy after hearing this. As he spoke, his body shivered violently, and he stared at Lily with his eyes. See, she heard this. She was not as excited as before, but looked terrifyingly calm. A wave of chills came to her heart. She paused for a long time, not knowing that Lily was stimulated by Liang Muebei's death. It was too deep, and the whole person became bewildered, or he was simply stunned with sadness. Just when he was a little worried, Lily held the handkerchief again and asked, "Have you found anything suspicious around?" After hearing this, Hui nodded hurriedly, "Yes. Someone's footprints were found at the scene. Concubine Xian's handkerchief was also found among the roses not far away. When I passed by, my servant had already sent someone to inquire. Qiu Yu in Fuan Palace said that concubine Xian paid her regards to the Queen Mother today. But she came back an hour late, so the time was right. The concubine Xian's surname is Guo. The natal family was extremely powerful and loyal to Emperor Yongming, but the concubine Xian was never very favored. She has a bright and charming appearance, and is extremely beautiful. However, she has a fierce and direct temper, just like a thorny rose, which is not suitable for this palace." In the plot, after Zhou Bei heard Huai's words, she hated Mrs. Guo so much that she targeted and harmed her everywhere. She even single-handedly supported An Ruyi, one of the maids next to Xianfei, to fight against her. The resentment was very deep, but at this moment Lily thought about it and felt that something was not quite right. It is obvious that Liang Muebei's death has something to do with concubine Xian, but because it is so obvious, it makes people suspicious. The Guo family is suspected of everything, but it seems to be a setup. It seems that if it were the real Lily Zhou who lost her beloved son and discovered the enemy who killed her, she would really hate her to the core. But now that Lily is not Zhou, she is aware of the suspicion in this matter. Although Mrs. Guo has a bad temper, in Lily's memory, she knows that Mrs. Guo is only rude at most, and she will do anything she can. She beats and scolds the palace maids, and openly orders people to beat the servants. She can do it even if she wants to die, but if it comes to doing such a dirty thing, she may not really dare to do it now. It's a coincidence, but it's really such a coincidence. As soon as Lily said this, Hui was suddenly stunned. Does the Empress think that this matter was not done by the virtuous concubine? Whoever killed my son, I will naturally investigate and find out. I have to avenge my son's murder, but I don't want to avenge him randomly and let Mu Bei die in vain. If it was the concubine Xian who did it, I will naturally want to find out, cut her body into pieces. If there is someone behind the scenes, I will not tolerate that dark villain." Lily sneered twice, and suddenly asked, "Where is Shiking?" "Shi Qing is guarding the eldest prince at this time, my empress." Before Hui could finish her words, Lily interrupted her, "Has Mu Bei's nanny been under control?" "Take it, just waiting for the queen to be relieved." Although Hui replied that the nanny was caught, it was obvious that during the period when the original owner passed out, the servants in the palace had completely lost their control. It was not until Lily gave the order that Hui hurriedly sent someone to escort the nanny over. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1118. Liang Muebei's nanny, Zhen, was in her 20s this year, with a plump and graceful figure. She was still wearing a pink palace dress, her body was trembling, and she knelt in front of Lily, her forehead on the ground, as obedient and quiet as a quail. Lily was half lying on the side of the couch, staring at Madame Zhen with cold eyes. Her face was still pale after the death of her son. She didn't put on powder or makeup, and she didn't even hold her head up. She was not the usual aloof and graceful imperial concubine. At this time Lily was calm and a bit effeminate, with a few strands of hair hanging down on her chest, and those black and white eyes made Mrs. Zhen panic. "Your Majesty." There was silence in the palace for a long time. The more no one spoke, the more heaviness seemed before the storm. Everyone in the Xianfu palace where the imperial concubine was located was so angry that they did not dare to take a breath. Mrs. Zhen knelt down. The ground, my heart felt like a huge stone was hanging on it, and I was up and down. It was already the cold winter of November, but there was a large amount of cold sweat on Zhen's back, and the hair on her forehead was wet with sweat. The whole person seemed to be fished out of the water. She couldn't bear the dull and murderous air any longer, and finally couldn't help but speak to break the silence of the room. When Zhen spoke, her voice was delicate and timid, like a frightened oriole, sweet and moving. The palace was so quiet that everyone seemed to hear the sound of their own heartbeats. A group of maids in the inner palace of Xianfa Palace in Nyoda looked at their noses and hearts. When Zhen's voice suddenly sounded, it seemed empty and empty. When I spoke, I felt my voice was a little weird, and I wanted to cough, but I didn't dare. Maybe after calling Lily once, she gradually became bolder, as if she was sinking the boat with an axe. He placed his forehead on the ground and said respectfully, I failed to take good care of the eldest prince this time. I know that I deserve death, so I beg you to punish me. Lily's eyes finally fell on Zhen. She must have felt it, as her body became stiffer and stiffer. After a while, Lily's voice sounded faintly in the palace. Your mother is a daughter of Zhou's family. She serves in the second room. Because the second aunt gave her grace, she was promised to be the steward of Zhuangzi Mrs. Zhen didn't know what Lily meant when she suddenly mentioned her origins, but her heart became more and more stiff, her body was extremely anxious, her limbs were trembling slightly, she could feel the cold sweat flowing from the pores on her back, and her lips were extremely dry. But she couldn't open her mouth to speak, and her throat seemed to be rubbed by sand. After a long time, she came back to her senses and nodded stiffly, Your Majesty is right, it's all the grace given by the Zhou family. After the marriage, your parents only had you as their only daughter. When they came of age, they married the eldest son of Manager Sunday. There was no news after the marriage. Until 6 years ago, a daughter was born, whose nickname was Ruizu, right? These Zhen Lily's information was all recalled when Lily was collecting her memories. When she mentioned Zhen's daughter Ruizu, Zhen's face changed drastically, and there was a cry in her voice, and she kowtowed desperately, Mother, Your Majesty is right, but Your Majesty. This matter has nothing to do with my husband's family and my daughter. Relationship. Please forgive me, please forgive me. Lily ignored her and continued, It is precisely because your parents are from the Zhou family that I chose you to enter the palace at the beginning of my pregnancy. When I was choosing a wet nurse, I chose you to enter the palace. It was Liang Muibei at first. When choosing a wet nurse, the Zhou family and Zhou Bei had gone through several serious considerations. After all, the current emperor Yongming had no other heirs except Liang Muibei. The existence of Liang Muibei was related to the honor and disgrace of the Zhou family. Surviving in the palace was not easy. When Zhou Bei married Emperor Yongming, he was still just the prince and had not ascended the throne as emperor. However, there were still constant fights in the harem, and Zhou Bei was inevitably involved in dirty tricks many times. She was filthy. He had also been assassinated by others, and had to endure a lot of hardships to save Liang Muibei's son. He regarded the son as much as a pearl in his eyes. When choosing a nanny for her son that day, Lily Zhou also put her heart into it. After all, the nanny wanted to nanny Liang Muibei. In order to prevent the nanny from harming her son, the first thing she had to choose was someone who was reliable and trustworthy. Naturally, the one she trusted the most was her natal family, so when Zhou Lily's mother, Mrs. Zhou, brought some people into the palace, saying they were wet nurses for her, Zhou Lily had great trust in these people. Empress. Zhen became even more frightened when she heard Lily's words. Lily neither beat or scolded her, nor did he order her life as soon as she opened her mouth. This made Mrs. Zhen tremble even more. She knew very well that Lily Zhou was a person who looked elegant and dignified on the surface, but was actually very capable. Now her only son Liang Muibei died due to a plot, which was like ripping out the heart of the imperial concubine. Not only did she not get angry, but she seemed to be very calm at this time. This contrast made Zhen's face turn purple, and she was so horrified that she wanted to huddle up. If Lily had really opened her mouth to give her the death penalty, Mrs. Zhen might have breathed a sigh of relief, but it was precisely because Lily had done nothing that the depression before the storm made people even more panicked. I have great trust in you, but you betrayed my trust. Mu Bei died under your care. After Lily said this, Mrs. Zhen finally couldn't stand the fear in her heart, and she knelt on the ground with her forehead on the ground. After a few steps, he trembled and cried, and said involuntarily, "My crime deserves to be punished by death. My crime deserves to be punished by death. Please don't harm my parents, my husband, and my daughter. I am willing to die." After she finished speaking, she knocked her head on the ground with a bang bang sound. Not long after, a blood stain appeared on the ground, but Zhen didn't seem to feel any pain, and she kept shouting over and over again. He said, "This slave deserves death, please forgive me. What's the use of you being dead? Can my Mu Bei survive?" Lily sneered and stroked the unwrinkled skirt of her clothes on her chest. "Everyone knows that sin deserves death, but where does that come from? How many people died? If your death can bring my Mu Bei back to life, then you will die." After saying that, Lily paused and gradually sat up straight. "But my Mu Bei, can he survive?" When she spoke later, her tone rose and her voice gradually became sharper. "He is still lying there. Have you gone to see him?" Lily was gentle at first, but now when she asked Zhen, her tone became sharp. Zhen's whole body was shaking violently, her teeth were chattering, and her nostrils could not help but cry because of the sound of crying. Voice: "I was so scared that I didn't even dare to ask for mercy. That's all, people can't be resurrected after death. It won't help if I get angry with you now." Zhen heard this. She was a little stunned for a moment, and she even seemed a little out of sorts because she was so surprised. She raised her head and stared directly at Lily. But she saw Lily looking at her coldly. There were no tears in Lily's eyes, but there was no warmth at all. In comparison, she didn't look like the mother of a child who had just died. Instead, she had tears in her eyes and a look of embarrassment on her face. "Your little daughter is less than 3 years old, only a few months older than my Mu Bei, who is younger. It would be too lonely to walk on the road to hell. There must be someone around to accompany you." Madame Zhen began to hear Lily mention it. When he was his little daughter, a bad premonition had already arisen in his heart. When he heard Lily's words, he was so shocked that his body went limp and he collapsed on the ground, shivering and unable to make a sound. "I am the one who decides to leave an acupuncture point for Mu Bei in her resting place so that she can stay with me for a long time." As soon as Lily said these words, Mrs. Zhen burst into tears. "Your Majesty, please forgive me, Your Majesty, please have mercy." Because Mrs. Zhen gave birth very late, she did not become pregnant until she was 21 years old and gave birth to a girl. Although he is not a son, it is because this daughter is hard won. The husband is dissatisfied. She thought she was giving birth to a daughter and was not happy with Ruizu in every possible way. When Ruizu was born, her husband still owed a lot of gambling debts. He said that he could not support his daughter and would throw her away. It is for this reason Mrs. Zhen feels even more sorry for her daughter and loves her to the core. He named her Ruizu, which hurt so much that he wanted to hold it in his heart. In the end, he fought to enter the palace for the sake of his daughter, and nursed a son for Zhou Beihe, who was still the crown princess at the time. The money he earned was sent home, hoping that her husband would, for his own sake, he would be better to his daughter. On weekdays, Mrs. Zhen was reluctant to eat or drink, so she sent all the things Zhou Lily had given her home, wishing she could raise her daughter to be as valuable as pearls and jade. Now that something has happened, Mrs. Zhen is not afraid of dying. After all, she nursed the eldest prince for 2 years, and the rewards and money she received were enough for her mother-in-law and her husband's family to live a good life. However, her precious pearl is gone. The Sun family also has money and can raise her well. But now Lily actually said that her daughter should die, which hurt her more than cutting out Zhen's heart, and made Zhen go crazy. My queen, no, no, my queen. Lily sneered twice, no. If my Mu Bei dies, your daughter's life will be precious. You didn't take good care of the eldest prince, causing him to suffer at the hands of traitors. Now I will give your daughter a favor. Don't you want to continue? When Mrs. Zhen heard this, she didn't know where the strength came from, and struggled to get up, but the painting on the side was clearly visible, and there was no way she could be allowed to crawl to Lily's side and grab Lily. It was pulled, so as soon as Mrs. Zhen moved, two big and round women held her down, making her unable to move. She was still screaming and shouting. Your Majesty, please forgive me, everyone is responsible for the work. I did not take good care of the eldest prince. I am guilty. But my daughter is young and does not understand this. If I want to give this slave the death penalty, I am willing to be punished. I beg your Majesty to have mercy. I beg your Majesty, for the sake of my family's loyalty to the Zhou family for generations, I will spare my daughter's life. Madame Zhen really loves her daughter, and in order to plead for her daughter, she risked her own life. When she heard Lily wanted to execute her daughter, she was so excited that the two nuns could hardly hold her down. Her face turned red, her hair was disheveled, and beads of sweat were flowing down her forehead. Just seeing her like this, Lily didn't have any sympathy in her heart. Since you know that your parents are the sons of the Zhou family and are loyal to the Zhou family, I was relieved to hand Mu Bei into your hands. It's also for this reason that it's a pity that your parents are so loyal, but they raised such an unfamiliar dog like you. As soon as she said this, Mrs. Zhen was so frightened that her hands and feet became paralyzed and she could no longer struggle. In the plot, Zhou Bei was suffering from the death of her son and couldn't bear to conduct a thorough investigation. She only used the virtuous concubine Guo as her example, hating her and the Empress Dowager Lu. Apart from hastily executing Zhen, Zhou Bei never investigated in detail again. This matter became an old wound that would remain in her heart forever, and she could not touch it. But now when Lily thought about it, she realized the end point. Liang Mubei was only over 2 years old. Although he was naturally smart, he was still young. If there was no one to guide him, how could he clamor to go to Queen Mother Lu's palace? The most important thing is that because Liang Mubei was so favored by Zhou Bei, everyone in the Xianfu palace treated him like a jade bead and handled him with care. On weekdays, he was reluctant to even let him walk on the ground, so how could he suddenly fall into the pond of the royal garden? Where was Mrs. Zhen at that time? She said that she wanted to go to the Queen Mother's palace, and that Zhen's eyes were wrong because of something. In fact, she was just telling the truth. There must have been other things going on. While Huai was looking for someone to bring Mrs. Zhen up, Lily checked her information and now used her daughter to scare her. First he frightened her into confusion, and then tried to trick her, and now the clues really came out. When Mrs. Zhen heard Lily's words, her originally flushed face suddenly turned pale. Her lips were trembling, and she couldn't utter a complete word. She shook her head desperately, but couldn't open her mouth. If this palace's Mu Bei had no reason, why would he suddenly shout to go to the Queen Mother's palace? Lily stared at Zhen's face. Zhen's heart was beating very fast and she bit her lip. Yes, yes, it's the Queen Mother who loves the eldest prince. Count, I have met the eldest prince several times, and she always greets her with melons and fruits. The eldest prince loves her so much that he clamors to see the Queen Mother. A group of servants in the Xianfu palace were quiet, and Mrs. Zhen said sadly. The cry echoed in the palace, sounding extremely sad and harsh. Lily stared at her coldly, the tears on her face were crisscrossed and gathered like streams, but Lily's expression did not soften at all. As Zhen talked, seeing Lily's disbelief, her eyes gradually became anxious. Young children like melon and fruit snacks. I believe this, she nodded. When Mrs. Zhen heard what she said, her eyes lit up, and there was a bit of joy in her eyes, but the next moment. Lily then said, but the child is very forgetful. Where did you get it today? If there is no adult to remind me, I'm afraid I will forget it as soon as I turn around. At this point, Lily sneered, how dare you get it to this point? You have deceived me with your nonsense, Mrs. Zhen. I will give you one last chance. If you tell the truth, I will give you the death penalty. Your parents, daughters, and husband's family will be exempted from the death penalty, but the living penalty will be unforgivable. If you still insist on going your own way, insist on wanting to use these words to deceive me, your whole family, and I want them all to be buried with my mube. You know I can say it and do it. It's good to be able to enjoy some wealth, but if you lose your life, how can you enjoy it? After Lily said this, Zhen's face showed a look of struggle. Seeing this, Lily again, he said, is there anything more important than your own life, or more important than your daughter? These words obviously touched the softest part of Zhen's heart. She suddenly collapsed and burst into tears. Mother, please have mercy. She kept saying these two sentences back and forth, but Lily didn't care at all. Moved, she shouted for a while, and Mrs. Zhen realized it herself. At this time, begging for mercy had no effect at all. Lily already hated her deeply because of her son's death. She hesitated for a long time before gritting her teeth. Can the queen spare my daughter? When Mrs. Zhen had a strange look on her face, Lily already knew that there must be something fishy in this matter. But seeing Mrs. Zhen unable to shed tears without seeing the coffin, to this point, she still wanted to negotiate terms with her. Lily couldn't help but sneered. I am not afraid to tell you that when something happened to the eldest prince, I had already asked someone to leave the palace. Now your daughter is being taken into the palace. If you still want to delay time, if she enters after you leave the palace, life and death will not be up to you. Whether you like to say it or not, I know exactly who did it. I just want to make sure. You want to tell me? If the conditions delay the time, then it is a wrong idea. The original owner's son died, but now Zhen still wants to save her daughter's life. Her daughter is a human being, but Zhou Lily's son is not. After hearing Lily's words, Mrs. Zhen's face changed even more. After hesitating for a long time, she finally gritted her teeth and cried bitterly, please forgive me, I'm going to kill you. After she said this, her whole body seemed to soften. She no longer had the strength to struggle. Until now, Mrs. Zhen was like a nut whose hard shell had been broken. Lily raised her chin at the two nuns holding her. As soon as the two women let go, Mrs. Zhen became soft. He was paralyzed on the ground, like an insect, unable to get up. 3 months ago, the eldest prince was crying non-stop. Aunt Yang happened to be ill and could not nurse the eldest prince, so she had to let the slave take over. In order to comfort the eldest prince, the slave took the eldest prince to the imperial garden, and happened to meet Suho. Saying that he went to the imperial medical office to get some mint for the queen mother to wake up. When Suho saw the eldest prince, he said hello and asked a few more questions. Maybe he went back to talk to the queen mother, and the queen mother was thinking about the eldest prince. Now Empress Dowager Lu entered the palace at a young age. She became a widow not long after entering the palace. She was still young and life in the palace was difficult, even though she was a queen mother on the surface. But in fact, a beautiful girl was trapped in the palace and died. She had nothing to do and she loved children very much, so she was rewarded with some fruits and melons to the eldest prince. At that time, Mrs. Zhen also knew that Zhou Lily valued Liang Mubei very much. She was so protective that she was deeply afraid that Lily Zhou would blame her for taking the eldest prince out without the imperial concubine's consent. Therefore, she dared not say anything about it. When the queen mother sent melons and fruits, she did not dare to give them to the eldest prince. I didn't dare to eat it, because I was afraid that something would go wrong, so I threw it away. During that time, Grandma Yang, who was on duty with her, was ill. She was taking care of the eldest prince alone. Zhou Beihe had been angry in the past 2 days because Emperor Yongming had recently favored Lu Guiran, so he just managed to hide the matter. But from then on, the Queen Mother seemed to remember the eldest prince, and asked people to send small things over from time to time. Sometimes they were not valuable things, just some children's pockets. As time went by, Mrs. Zhen realized that she didn't seem to have other thoughts, so she gradually relaxed. Until 2 months ago, when Grandma Yang recovered from her illness, she wanted to ask someone to bring something to her daughter when she had time, but she was met with misfortune. The eunuch in the palace was in trouble. Suho, who was beside the Queen Mother, saw it and helped her. Mrs. Zhen was grateful. That day he quietly went to the Queen Mother's palace to thank her. The Queen Mother then said that she was a widow at a young age. Life in the palace was difficult, and the emperor's concubines were scheming. Although Zhou Beihe was nominally her daughter-in-law, she was 1 year older than the Queen Mother Lu. And because when Emperor Yongming ascended the throne that day, he did not make Zhou Lili the queen. Instead, she was only made the imperial concubine, so the phoenix seal, which represents the supreme power in the harem, is still in the hands of the Queen Mother. Logically speaking, when a new emperor ascends the throne, as soon as the emperor and his courtiers are appointed, Empress Dowager Lu, the widow of the previous emperor, should move out of the Fengming Palace where she resides, and move to the Zikan Palace where all previous empresses have lived, and hand over the phoenix seal to the new empress. But because of the emperor's unexpected move, although Zhou Beihe was the legitimate wife of Emperor Yongming that day, she was not registered as the queen at this time. The name of the palm phoenix seal was not legitimate, and Emperor Yongming did not let Lu the Queen Mother moved out of Fengming Palace and instead arranged Xianfa Palace for Zhou Beihe. Although she was still the master of the first palace, as the former crown princess, she had done nothing wrong since she ascended the throne. The phoenix seal is no longer in his hands, and the harem is still under the control of Empress Dowager Lu. It is inevitable that the situation between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law will become somewhat delicate. When she accidentally talked about this matter, Empress Dowager Lu's face showed a bit of melancholy. Zhen naturally knew Zhou Beihe's resentment towards Empress Dowager Lu, but at this moment she didn't know why Empress Dowager Lu would talk to her about this, and she was embarrassed but also a little sympathetic. The Queen Mother was younger than herself, but she was widowed at a young age and had no children. She didn't know how she would survive in this life. When I met the Queen Mother this time, this noble person was not like Zhou Lili made Mrs. Zhen feel scared and surrendered, but she felt a little more sympathetic and compassionate. From then on, when the Empress Dowager gave gifts to her again, Mrs. Zhen occasionally felt brave enough to use them. Fortunately, Empress Dowager Lu also knew why she didn't dare to give too much. She didn't give many things, but Zhen and Suho, who was beside Empress Dowager Lu, gradually became familiar with each other. After getting acquainted, Mrs. Zhen would occasionally tell some things about her family during conversations. Knowing that she had a daughter at home, the Empress Dowager Lu even rewarded her daughter with a pair of pearls as a tribute from the South China Sea. When she received the reward, Mrs. Zhen did not dare to ask for it. She went to thank the Queen Mother, but Queen Mother Lu said that when her daughter's family gets married in the future, they will need 1 or 2 precious things so that others will not dare to look down on her daughter. Zhen's biggest weakness is her daughter. When she heard that it would be beneficial to her daughter, she acquiesced and stopped refusing. But from then on, as if to repay the Queen Mother, she began to always take care of Liang Muobei. He kept whispering some kind words about the Queen Mother for a long time. As Lily said, children tend to be forgetful, but if someone keeps talking in his ears all day long, he will always remember it. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 1119. Liang Muibei became close to the Queen Mother, and asked her to hug her from time to time, and went to Fengming Hall where the Queen Mother was. Zhen thought that now it was the eldest prince who was clamoring to see the Queen Mother, and when Lily Lin blamed her in the future, she might also. You can't necessarily blame her. But she didn't dare to go to the palace where the Queen Mother lived too many times a month. She only went once every 10.5 days. In fact, she hadn't been there a few times so far. Who thought something would happen today? The Queen Mother usually loves the eldest prince, holding her in her arms and refusing to let go. Today the Queen Mother said. When Zhen said this, she was already in tears and couldn't make a sound. Lily had already guessed that things were not simple. Without interrupting her at this time, she sniffed by herself, and then continued. The Queen Mother said that she is willing to relieve my slave status of Ruizuer and make a good marriage for her. She is a concubine from her natal family. The son of my distant cousin from the same clan. It was precisely because of this that Ms. Zhen was so happy when she heard it. She only thanked God for his blessing. Her parents were slaves, and she herself was a slave all her life. Her biggest regret was that she was not born into a good family, and even after her daughter was born, she was a slave. If her daughter could escape from slavery, and if she could marry Lu even if he is a concubine, he is always grateful. Enjoy. Ms. Zhen quickly kowtowed and thanked her. Empress Dowager Lu also asked her to draw a portrait of her daughter and write down her birth date to match the side branches of the concubine of the Lu family. Ms. Zhen quickly agreed, and the eldest prince was then he left it to Suho to look after. Suho usually loved the eldest prince, but she didn't think about it that much. Who would have thought that it was just such a mistake? When she came back to her senses, Zhen was satisfied and imagined that her daughter would be freed from slavery in the future. When he was able to become a good son, he heard that the eldest prince was missing. Terrified, she hurriedly went out to look for him, but the eldest prince had already been fished out of the water. The bodies were hard. Some people said that the veil of concubine Guo was found nearby, but who said it at that time? Zhen was so flustered that she no longer remembered. When Huai asked about it back in Xianfu Palace, she hurriedly told everything she knew about the situation. I don't know when someone put a handkerchief into her hand, and she handed it all into Huai's hand. At this time, she told everything she knew about the situation. Zhen knew that she would definitely die. At this time, her whole body was as soft as a puddle of mud and she could not get up. When she was determined to die at the beginning, although she was a little scared at that time, she was calm and not panicked. At that time, she thought that the matter might not involve her. No matter how fierce concubine Zhou is, she may not think of that. She just hopes that if she bites the bullet and does not tell the details of the matter, Empress Dowager Lu may allow her Ruizuer to do so for the sake of keeping her secret. May you have a long and healthy life. As long as Ms. Zhen thinks that her life is for her daughter, as long as her daughter can live well, she will die without regrets. It's just that Zhen didn't think of it in the end. Lily did not become distraught because of the loss of her legitimate son, nor did she get beaten to death with sticks in anger. Instead, she used her daughter to threaten her to tell the truth. At this time, Ms. Zhen was filled with regret. I only hope that Queen Mother Lu can remember what she said today and give her daughter a future, otherwise. Zhen herself didn't dare to think about the remaining consequences. Lily was really moved when she heard this. Just because of such a woman, Zhou Lily lost her heart and soul. It was because Zhen was selected by the Zhou family. Because her parents were born in the Zhou family and had been loyal for generations, and the Zhou family's husband and daughter were all under the control of the Zhou family, Ms. Zhou originally thought that Zhen would be so easy to control. I understand that she can't be a playboy, so she can safely send him to the palace. But she didn't expect that Xiao He would succeed and Xiao He would fail. For this reason, Zhen really served Liang Muibei with all her heart and did not dare to do any harm. It was absolutely impossible for other concubines in the palace to bribe her, but at first, the Zhou family controlled her family's daughter and used it as a weapon to control them. Unexpectedly, one day because of Sun Ruizhu, Zhou Beihe's legitimate son Liang Muibei would be involved. Now that the matter has been heard, it has become obvious. As Lily thought, the concubine Guo may have been set up by someone, and the matter is inseparable from the Empress Dowager Lu. Although on the surface it seemed that she was not really involved in this matter, even if Zhen's confession was presented to the court, Empress Dowager Lu could completely evade it. At most, she could say that she failed to fulfill her disciplinary duties, and at worst, she would have beaten several palace officials to death. Someone was in trouble, but Zhou Beihe's Muibei could not come back. Lily Zhou may have thought of this in the plot. Deep down in her heart, she might have known that concubine Xian had been framed. But at that time, Lily Zhou was like a wounded female animal, and she needed something to vent her heart. It was precisely because of her son's death and the emperor's rebuke that she made enemies everywhere. She went crazy and attacked people in the palace, and finally died, which was very satisfying. Now that the matter has come to this, Liang Muibei is dead, and it is useless to blame Mrs. Zhen. Lily waved her hand, drag him down, wait until his parents and relatives enter the palace, and then beat him to death with sticks. When Liang Muibei died, Mrs. Zhen had already guessed that she would definitely die. She had been mentally prepared for this, but courage was something that failed again and again. If she gave her death, she might not be as scared as she is now. When she heard Lily say that she would beat her to death in front of her parents and relatives, Zhen's whole body collapsed. If her parents were both present, how would she tell her parents? Did you do such a stupid thing? And hurt them? What's more, when there are relatives around, most people's hearts are at their most vulnerable. When Zhen thinks that her relatives are there, but she will die tragically in front of them, she is ready to bite her tongue and commit suicide. The two nuns were so quick to see the opportunity, how could they allow Mrs. Zhen to be in front of them so happily at this time? He hurriedly stepped forward and pinched Zhen's chin open. She stammered and shouted, "My queen, please forgive me, my queen, please have mercy. At this point, I know how to be merciful. I was born in the Zhou family. Your parents serve your master with all their heart. Please show mercy to your majesty. Please show mercy to your majesty." Her chin was pinched and her speech was somewhat unclear, but Mrs. Zhen was still shouting desperately at this moment. After hearing what she said, Lily raised her head and glanced at her. "It's your parents' duty to serve the master wholeheartedly. Do you still want reward? Do you think that you have served the Zhou family for many years and the Zhou family has not been kind to you? Release her from the palace and promise your daughter the status of a good son, so that your daughter will no longer be a slave or a maid." After Lily said this, Mrs. Zhen did not speak. It was obvious that although she did not speak, she did think so in her heart. What kind of aristocratic family is the Lu family? Even if it has a reputation for benevolence and righteousness, how can it marry a slave? Let alone a bastard, even ordinary people who have some relationship with the Lu family may not agree. Lily looking at Mrs. Zhen, her eyes were red from crying. When she heard this, she was in a daze and couldn't believe it. She wanted to refute but didn't dare. Lily then said, "What's more, does Empress Dowager Lu have such a person? I'm not sure yet. I'm sorry for your stupidity, but it's a pity for my Muibei." Impossible, impossible, how could the Queen Mother? Zhen obviously didn't believe this, and Lily was too lazy to tell her any more. Even if everything Zhen said was true, it's hard to say whether Empress Dowager Lu had the so-called nephew from her mother's family. After all, Zhen only knew in the end that her daughter was going to receive a great favor for no reason, but in the end it was she couldn't tell which nephew of the Lu family she was. A family like the Lu family would probably have hundreds of people in even the direct lineage. Empress Dowager Lu was only 16 when she married into the palace. At her age, even the direct lineage might not know everyone, let alone side branches and concubines. Mrs. Zhen was dragged down. She was still shouting that it was impossible. Lily no longer wanted to listen to her, so she had someone cover her mouth. If she shouted again, someone would have her tongue plucked out, so that the sound in the palace could be heard. Gradually it became less clear. Empress. Huai carefully knelt down in front of Lily. The scene just now made her unable to react. Seriously, is it really the Queen Mother? But, why did the Queen Mother do this? In Huai's heart, she actually believed that concubine Xianguo was the one who did it more than she believed that it was Empress Dowager Lu. There was not much hatred between the Empress Dowager and concubine Lin, even if so much nastiness arose because of the incident between the palace and Feng Yin. What? Is such hatred so serious that Queen Mother Lu would need to plot against a child? But what Zhen said before was still ringing in her ears now, and she couldn't help but not believe it. She spoke timidly, and Lily sneered twice. There is no love without reason in the world, and there is no hatred without reason. I also want to know why Empress Dowager Lu is the Queen Mother. Although she is a widow, she is undoubtedly the most important figure in the Northern Qi dynasty. She is already the most noble woman. As long as she does not make any mistakes, Emperor Yongming will have to recognize her as his mother throughout his life. Even if she is a concubine, she will not be able to plot against Zhou Beihe's son. There must be a reason for this. I'll freshen up and change my clothes first. I'm afraid it won't be long before the Emperor's orders will arrive. She spoke with a cold expression, as if she had buried all the sadness arising from Liang Muobei's death deep in her heart. She blushed and felt sour in her heart. She pressed the corners of her eyes before saying yes lightly. Lily first took a look at Liang Muobei. His small body had been soaked in water and turned white. The fat and white face in the memory of the original owner was now glowing with a terrible blue color. The people around him did not dare to breathe. Looking at the way the imperial concubine who used to be dignified and decent now stretched out her hand to touch Liang Muobei's cheek and hair, she shivered slightly. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1120. The eunuch who delivered the order from outside arrived, and this time it was Eunuch 11Er, the adopted son of Sanfu, the eunuch beside Emperor Yongming. As in the plot, Emperor Yongming did not appear in person, but only scolded the imperial concubine Zhou for not taking care of the royal heir. During the Zhou dynasty, Liang Muobei died in infancy, saying that her virtue was lacking, so she was demoted from the original imperial concubine to Lin Gaifei. However, because the eldest prince died in childhood, she still retained the title of the first of the four concubines. Share. When Shi Qing and Huayi heard this decree, they were both extremely angry. Lily had known that such a thing would happen, so she looked very calm. After she finished taking care of Liang Muobei's funeral, Mrs. Zhen was beaten to death in front of her relatives. On that day, many people from Xianfu Palace went to watch and saw what happened to the slave who betrayed her master. They all felt chills in their backs. When her body was dragged away, it was already soaked in blood. The eunuchs in the palace bravely washed it with water several times, but the smell of blood still lingered for a long time. In the plot, Liang Muobei died, and Zhou Beihe fell seriously ill. After recovering from the illness, it took several days to go out to pay respects to the Empress Dowager Lu, and set out to take revenge on those people in the palace who could not tolerate her son alive. But this time Lily did not suffer as long as Zhou Beihe. Because the prince was still young, according to the regulations of the Northern Qi dynasty, he could not have a big funeral if he was under 10 years old. Therefore, everything was kept simple during the funeral. She still showed up at the Queen Mother's palace on time the next day. Middle. Such a big event happened yesterday. First, the imperial concubine's only son died in infancy, and then she was demoted by Emperor Yongming. Everyone thought that her vitality was seriously damaged this time, and she couldn't hide in Xianfu Palace for several days. No one would have thought that concubine Zhou would appear on time in the Queen Mother's Fengming Palace again. When Lily came to Fengming Hall, she was not the first to arrive. When she arrived at Fengming Hall where Queen Mother Lu was, he happened to bump into concubine Xian on the small chariot. Even though Lily had just been demoted yesterday, she was still the highest-ranking person in the harem of Emperor Yongming. As a noble and virtuous concubine, the virtuous concubine still had to get off the carriage to pay her respects. "Sister, I want to express my condolences. Concubine Xian is 16 this year." She happened to be 2 years younger than Lily. She entered the harem of Emperor Yongming, who was still the crown prince at the age of 14. She was as bright as a rose, at the age when her buds were in full bloom. It could be seen that concubine Xian probably didn't sleep well last night. Her eyes were a little red, and even the powder on her fair face couldn't hide the haggardness beneath her pretty face. But because she was born well, this haggardness not only didn't make her look any darker, but actually made her look a little more delicate. A pitiful look. She wore a goose yellow top, a light green floor-length skirt, a snow-green cloak over her shoulders, and a pony top. Wearing a forehead ornament on her forehead makes her even more beautiful and graceful. Concubine Xian originally thought that Lily would definitely hide in Xianfu Palace today. After all, Emperor Yongming had only been on the throne for just a year, and he had the only legitimate son of the imperial concubine Zhou. No matter who looked at it, Liang Muibei should be the person whom Emperor Yongming will establish as the crown prince in the future should be someone the Zhou family and Zhou Beihe rely on. Unexpectedly, Liang Muibei died in an accident yesterday. Although many people in the harem were secretly happy about this incident, they all knew in their hearts that Lily Zhou's heart and liver had been gouged out, and they would probably be in pain for a while. If the matter had nothing to do with her, maybe concubine Xian would still watch the excitement. She was still young, and although she had intrigues, she was not yet old enough to be ruthless, so she still had a smile on her face. She couldn't do it yet. What an outrageous thing. But she didn't have a good impression of Zhou Lily at first. But yesterday, when Liang Muibei died, someone discovered her handkerchief not far away, and she was involved in the whirlpool. Concubine Xian also knew the character of the Zhou family. She will retaliate for her anger, and she looks extremely gorgeous on the surface. She is gentle and dignified, but in fact she is also cruel and intolerant. This time she was involved in the death of her son. According to Zhou Lily's character, I am afraid that after losing her beloved son, she will definitely hate herself to the core. She knew at that time when the news came, she was shocked and angry, but when her veil was lost, concubine Xian didn't notice at all. When she returned to the palace yesterday, she had ordered a thorough investigation, and finally found out the truth about the veil. The veil might not be hers. Both an Ru and an Shui, who were in charge of her veil, said that the veil had been washed out a few days ago. In order to prevent someone from using it for attack, they destroyed it. Who would have expected that it would appear now? An exact replica of the veil. After many searches, concubine Xian only found out that the person who ruined the handkerchief she washed was a palace servant named Gui from the Huanyi Bureau. On that day, concubine Xian had this handkerchief tucked into the clothes she sent to the Bureau of Huanyi. He was clumsy and didn't pay attention to the silk handkerchief. The silk handkerchief was so delicate that it broke when rubbed and was no longer usable when it was returned. When the palace attendant named Gui was checked again, the report said that because Gui knew that she had made a mistake, she hanged herself that night. There were quite a lot of eunuchs and maids in the palace. Sometimes palace eunuchs who made mistakes would be beaten and punished in the Huanyi Bureau. It was not uncommon for a palace eunuch to die. The body of Gui was dragged away when something happened. Got out. By the time concubine Xian thought of investigating this matter, Guiyer's body would probably have been dragged away by wild dogs. When she got here, concubine Xian didn't know that she had fallen into someone else's trap. She had said it so cleverly, her veil was destroyed as soon as she said it, and she was dealt with so badly that no trace of scum was left. It was such a coincidence that Liang Muibei was next to her. The unexpected appearance of her handkerchief, if concubine Xian had compared herself to Lily Lin, I'm afraid she wouldn't believe that there were so many coincidences. But she couldn't blame her palace servants for doing something wrong. Even if she had known about it that day, she probably wouldn't have thought about it that much. She might have asked someone to get rid of the veil. But now there is no proof. If he said that his veil had been destroyed long ago, who would believe it? The most important thing is that she found out yesterday that the emperor would pass by the imperial garden. When she came out from the Queen Mother's place to greet the emperor, she thought that she had not seen the emperor for several days. There were many people in Emperor Yangming's harem. Although he was stingy and would not give in easily. He is willing to grant titles to women, but there are many beauties in the palace. Although the concubine Xian is good looking, she cannot see the emperor a few times in a month. She has been in Liang He's palace for 2 years. Although she is only 16, she can in Liang He's eyes, he was already considered an old man. If he wanted to be favored by the emperor, he had to find another way. She walked around the imperial garden twice, but the emperor didn't see her, but she didn't know what was wrong. She had a severe abdominal pain. After looking for a place to deal with it, she was worried that something was wrong with her and that she would be ill. She was serving the emperor, so she ordered the eldest maid and Ru beside her to go to the imperial medical office to get some medicine. When she returned to the Jianjia palace where she was, it was already more than an hour later. Normally, that would be fine, but at this critical moment, her veil fell not far away from Liang Muibei's death, and she had been out for a long time without returning to her palace. Now she was really confused. It fell into my crotch, and I couldn't even explain what was happening all over my body. Concubine Xian didn't sleep all night last night. She knew that she had fallen into a trap. She went back and smashed a lot of things, but she still couldn't calm down. She originally wanted to come here early this morning to explain and plead with the Queen Mother. Zhou Beihe has a dignified position and vicious methods. She offended such a person and got into such a big incident. Concubine Xian used to have a bad temper and was on guard against the rest of the harem. Now she has done this. Behind the scenes, concubine Reed and those little bitches were probably waiting to see her laugh. Who would help her? She thought about it and realized that she needed someone to rely on in the palace, so she had someone pack her up early in the morning and rushed to Fengming Palace. Unexpectedly, she met Lily just as she arrived at the gate of Fengming Palace. Thinking of this, concubine Xian felt helpless. She did not attack Liang Muibei. She had no heirs, so there was no need to attack Liang Muibei now. But now she didn't know if Lily could listen to her words. Concubine Xian finished asking and then stood aside and stared at Lily from the corner of his eye. Because Liang Muibei had just died, Lily was not dressed as flamboyantly as the previous owner. Where concubine Xian was standing, she could see Lily's feet stepping on the small chariot. After she finished speaking, she heard Lily asking someone to stop the chariot. Her voice was still as gentle and calm as usual, and there was no hint of happiness or anger. But the more this happened, the more nervous concubine Xian became. She saw Buletin the chariot stopped, and a well-maintained jade hand was holding on the edge of the chariot. The nails were still stained with the juice of the impatience flower that had not completely faded away, and the color was extremely delicious. The nails were about an inch long, and the women in the palace were the most beautiful. Most people who love beauty keep their nails long, even Xianfei herself has them, and wears them with tortoise-shell armor to make her look even more gorgeous. But when concubine Xian saw that hand, she felt inexplicably scared, as if her neck was being pinched tightly, and even her breathing was not smooth. "Thank you for your kindness, Sister." Lily looked at concubine Xian's pale face for a moment, stretched out her hand to press her temples. "My sister came early, she has already arrived at Fengming Hall." Hearing this, concubine Xian didn't know whether it was because she had something on her mind, so she was overthinking it, or because there was indeed something in Lily's words. She subconsciously raised her head to look at Lily, only to see a smile on her lips and a smile on her face. Bofen's eyes were very bright. Just one glance from her made concubine Xian lower her head instinctively. For some reason, when she saw those eyes, she felt a little panicked for no reason. What happened yesterday? Concubine Xian couldn't hold her breath, and she opened her mouth to mention what happened yesterday. She originally came to the Queen Mother's palace for this matter today, but now she met Lily, knowing that she was very likely to. She didn't believe it, but concubine Xian still couldn't stand the injustice. Just when she was about to open her mouth to explain, Lily stretched out her hand to hold her back. "I don't know if it was because of the cold weather." Concubine Xian was frozen to death as soon as she was held by Lily's hand. She shivered for 2 or 3 times and wanted to pull out, but she didn't know whether it was because her strength was too weak or Lily's grip was too strong, so she couldn't pull out at all. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1121. Of course I know that what happened yesterday has nothing to do with my sister. It's just the treacherous villain who wants to make me and my sister hate each other. I know it well. After Lily finished speaking, she smiled slightly, and concubine Xian was stunned. Staring at her, she saw that her smile was elegant and gentle, and there was no hint of ferociousness on her face, but the look in her eyes made her feel cold. Just as she was about to speak, the ant in the Queen Mother's palace had already noticed the arrival of the two of them. Came out to greet him. She originally thought that she and concubine Xian had already arrived early enough, but what surprised Lily was that when she arrived at Empress Dowager Lu's palace, Emperor Yongming was also here. The Fengming Hall where Empress Dowager Lu is located is the place where the Empress in the harem is the mother of the world. It is very dignified and elegant. When Lily came, Empress Dowager Lu was already dressed and was talking to Emperor Yongming. When Lily and concubine Xian came in, Lu the Queen Mother's eyes paused for a moment, then she pursed her lips slightly, returning to her gentle and dignified appearance. She is only 17 this year, but she is already a figure of the grandmother generation. Because she is a new widow, Empress Dowager Lu mainly wears old-fashioned plain colors such as blue and black, and she cannot wear conspicuous jewelry. She wears a set that is extremely befitting her age. Wearing inconsistent emerald jewelry and a cyan velvet jacket, he was sitting in the seat with his back straight. Although the smile on her face is very restrained, because Empress Dowager Lu has a beautiful appearance and charming temperament, these old and simple clothes cannot suppress her at all. On the contrary, the cyan color makes her skin whiter and smoother, and she is still charming with every frown and smile. There is a bit of girlish charm showing through, and her eyes are like a cat's. Even a woman will be charmed by the movement of her eyes. The imperial concubine is here. Didn't the AI family have already asked Suhi to give instructions that the imperial concubine can rest and recuperate in Xianfu Palace for a few days? At this time, Empress Dowager Lu had a look of pity and worry on her face. She first asked Lily with concern, and then raised her eyelids. For those of you who don't have the eyesight to see, the imperial concubine is here. Why don't you hurry up and wait on her? As soon as she said this, the people in Fengming Palace seemed to have come back to their senses. Suho, the palace man next to her, hurriedly stepped forward to take away the silver crane feather cloak that Lily was wearing. Suho's expression was worried but respectful. There was no trace of guilt or fear at all. If she hadn't gotten some news from Zhen yesterday, Lily might have thought that the matter had nothing to do with her when she saw Suho. The Queen Mother was very enthusiastic about Lily at the moment. She knew that Xian concubine Guo came in with her, but she was lukewarm to Xian concubine in front of the emperor. If Xian concubine was stupider, she might have to give Lily away just because of this. Both hateful and defensive. Bei curled her lips and first greeted Empress Dowager Lu and Emperor Yongming. When Suho came to get her cloak, Suho's hand reached to her chest to pull the satin knot. She suddenly reached out and grabbed Suho's hand. The long nails dug into Suho's flesh, and Suho almost screamed out in pain. Her expression froze and she raised her head to look at Lily, but Lily ignored her. Instead, he smiled and said to Emperor Yongming, "The emperor has many things to do, but today it is a coincidence that I actually saw the emperor in the Queen Mother's palace." Emperor Yongming was wearing bright yellow imperial robes. He had obviously left early and had come to the court early. The young emperor was handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. Even when Lily came in, Emperor Yongming there was no interaction with Queen Mother Lu, but doubt still arose in Lily's heart. Liang Muibei died unexpectedly yesterday, but the emperor only came over to take a quick look at him because of his busy official duties, and then left again. If others look at it, I am afraid that Emperor Yongming was just sad and thought that he just did not dare to face Liang Muibei's death, but Zhou Bei had been married to Liang He for several years and loved him deeply. I probably know more about him than I know about myself. Emperor Yongming was well educated by the late emperor, even though he had many concubines in his harem after he came of age. Moreover, he could always treat them all equally. No matter they were as elegant and beautiful as Lily Zhou, or the virtuous concubine Guo, or the heroic concubine Gao, none of them could be favored by Liang He alone. On the contrary, the rain and dew have been evenly distributed all this time, which shows Liang He's extraordinary self-control and how cold-hearted he is. When Liang Muibei was born, Liang He was even most relieved that he had an heir. If the prince delayed in getting married, the important officials in the court would inevitably be worried. When his son was born, he was not happy that he was a father, but that he would be there. After a while, he was happy that his position as prince was secure. Such a heartless man did not protect his son when he died. Instead, he just came here and the rest of the funeral affairs were taken care of by the palace people. However, he came to pay his respects to Empress Dowager Lu early this morning. This is really outrageous. Lily had to be suspicious. He wore a golden crown with a huge pearl in the middle. 2 bright yellow straps passed behind his ears. He tied 2 knots at his chin with tassels and beads. His handsome face was full of emotion at this time. With the majesty and indifference of the emperor, De Ma Jin Dao sat in his position. After listening to Lily's words, Liang He frowned slightly, and his slender eyes looked at Lily with a sharp gaze. "I have come to pay my respects after the morning court, so why don't I have to wait until sunrise before I come?" "Your Majesty, your concubine is here late." His voice was cold and seemed to be without any emotion, but Lily smiled and stretched out her hand to hold Suho tighter. The concubines in the palace had nothing to do. She has the habit of growing nails. The original owner's nails were about an inch long. They had been smeared with impatience juice, and the juice was plump and red in color. Now she pinched Suho hard. Not only Lily herself hurt, but also the back of Suho's hand was broken. The skin and blood dripped out from the edges of the nails. Although she is the eldest palace maid beside the Queen Mother, Suho is not an ordinary servant. She is the palace maid beside the Queen Mother, and she is also a high-ranking palace servant. From the time when Queen Mother Lu entered the palace, she held the phoenix for her. The character of Yin won the trust of the Empress Dowager Lu, and there was also a little palace maid waiting on her on weekdays. I am afraid that the ordinary boudoir girl is not as good as her with tender skin and tender flesh. Now she is in pain. If it were not for the rules, Suho by this time, he had already screamed. But even if she tried her best to endure it, her face was still a little pale, but in front of her master, when Lily and the emperor were talking again, there was no room for her to speak, so she just endured the pain. The original owner lost her son. Even if Liang Muibei drowned because of her poor care, no one suffered the pain of losing his son more than her. Emperor Yongming not only did not say a word of comfort yesterday, he also did not mention a thorough investigation of the murderer. If, instead, someone was sent to reprimand her yesterday and her account was banned. Today she came to say hello, and she was vaguely blaming herself for coming too late. Lily sneered in her heart. The original owner had love for Emperor Yongming, and after giving birth to an heir, he also had a desire for his son to inherit the northern Qi dynasty. In addition, because of his mother's family, and the lessons the original owner received since childhood, he had the idea that the king is greater than the sky, so he respected and loved Emperor Yongming. Even though she was plotting against other women in the harem, she didn't dare to plot in front of Emperor Yongming, she just wished she could win his favor. She had been looking forward to the arrival of Emperor Yongming for countless days and nights since marrying into the royal family. She had been looking forward to it since she married into the East Palace, and then gradually became cold-hearted after giving birth to her son. She had just turned 18, but she felt like she was getting old. There had been no shortage of beauties in the palace since ancient times, especially the rich emperor. But now Lily is not afraid. She has no love for Emperor Yongming from her original owner and is afraid of her son, but now her son has died at the hands of others. The Zhou family will eventually be uprooted by the emperor. Even if she keeps lying down, the emperor may not tolerate her. Although Lily was not prepared to completely anger Emperor Yongming to avoid causing trouble for herself before she was unable to protect herself, she was not prepared to pretend to be generous like the original owner. It's just that the emperor came too early, not that my concubine came too late. Before Emperor Yongming could speak, she took the words by herself, and then her eyes changed. Yesterday, because of the Muibei incident, so much happened. I was in such a hurry that I didn't have time to see the emperor. Originally, I wanted to ask the emperor for justice after paying my respects to the Queen Mother. Now that I have met the emperor, I don't have to make an extra trip. As soon as Lily mentioned Liang He, Suho's body froze slightly when she was holding him, and she noticed it. But as if he didn't feel it, his eyes turned slightly red. I only have such a son. Now I am being assassinated, and I am begging the emperor to make the decision to find the real culprit who killed Muibei. I will let her, Lily said, paused, and looked at her first. Looking towards Queen Mother Lu, she saw a look of sympathy and discomfort in her almond-shaped eyes. Her eyes were sparkling, as if she was also sad for Liang Muibei's death. She curled her lips and finally his eyes were fixed on Suho. I won't die a good death. Suho shivered violently, his face lowered, and his chin seemed to hit his chest. Emperor Yongming didn't speak for a while, but Empress Dowager Lu sighed. The AI family knows that the concubine is in pain. The emperor came here today and asked about this matter. This matter was all done by an undisciplined slave in the AI family palace. Aig of the family has ordered people to beat him to death, but it's a pity that Muibei lives, but he hasn't come back yet. As soon as Queen Mother Lu finished speaking, Lily sneered in her heart. The eunuch who Queen Mother Lu beat to death belonged to no one's palace. As for the eyeliner, she was ruthless. She not only made someone a scapegoat, but also eliminated a thorn in his side. She also killed two birds with one stone by getting rid of Liang Muibei. On the surface, the incident was caused by the eunuch who improperly guarded Liang Muibei and was beaten to death by Empress Dowager Lu as a scapegoat. However, secretly, it had been spread that concubine Xian was responsible for the incident. If the eunuch was really beaten death, this matter has been finalized, and I am afraid that I will never be able to get rid of the stigma. Concubine Xian's pretty face was blue and white, and when she was about to speak, Liang He snorted coldly. If you hadn't taken care of yourself improperly, how could Muibei have escaped into the royal garden? Now that something happened, we only know the consequences of the investigation. What were you doing earlier? The emperor was furious, and everyone in Fengming Palace knelt down except Queen Mother Lu. Lily endured the disgust in her heart and said, "The Emperor's lesson is correct, but now that things have happened, if the real culprit behind the scenes is not found, my concubine Mu Bei's soul in heaven will not be able to rest in peace. I beg the Emperor to make the decision." "What else do you want to do?" Emperor Yongming raised his eyebrows, his expression a little impatient. Lily didn't care how unhappy he was. "Yesterday, I already interrogated the nanny who took care of Mu Bei. She said that Mu Bei clamored to see him yesterday." "Queen Mother, so she carried Mu Bei to Fengming Palace?" Lily spoke slowly. After hearing this, Queen Mother Lu nodded. "That's true. It was not the case that Liang Mu Bei went to Fengming Palace yesterday. It's a secret. I don't know how many people in the palace are watching. Even if Queen Mother Lu doesn't want to admit it, it's impossible." After she said this, she asked again, "Does the noble concubine think that the AI family harmed Mu Bei?" "Empress Dowager Lu has a very advantageous status. As long as she does not commit any serious crimes against ethics, she will enjoy endless wealth and glory in her life. Not to mention that Lily is just a concubine now, even if she is a queen. You still have to humble yourself in front of her, otherwise you will be labeled as unfilial." She took the initiative to say this now. Even though Lily knew that Queen Mother Lu had something to do with this matter, she still denied it. "I don't dare." She meant she didn't dare. Rather, Queen Mother Lu's eyelids drooped, her petite and exquisite figure was wrapped in old-fashioned and heavy palace clothes, and she did not speak. Lily then said, "Ms. Zhen once said that Mu Bei was close to the Queen Mother, but unfortunately the Queen Mother was busy with things and ordered Aunt Su to serve her. As for why Mu Bei, who was a concubine, ended up in the imperial garden, Aunt Su he was also to blame." When Lily started talking, Queen Mother Lu originally thought she was going to target her, but she didn't expect that Lily would mention Zhen at this moment. But he didn't mention what Zhen had said to him at all, and instead brought the topic to Suho. Queen Mother Lu was stunned for a moment and pursed her lips slightly. Suho, whose hand was held by Lily at this moment, turned pale after hearing this, but did not speak. At this time, he was involved in the murder of the eldest prince. She was calm and loyal to Queen Mother Lu. She didn't open her mouth to cry out for injustice at this moment. She obviously knew that Queen Mother Lu would not watch her die. Lily curled her lips. She had never thought of letting Suho die so easily, but even if Suho could avoid the death penalty, he could not escape the living penalty. And so he didn't take Mu Bei seriously, so she accidentally let him enter the imperial garden. If nothing happened, then Mu Bei went there at such a young age. I feel like there are needles pricking my heart. Still. Please ask the Emperor to make the decision. As Lily spoke, tears welled up. Liang He frowned and did not speak. Empress Dowager Lu had already said, this matter was not done by Suho, and Suho was Empress Dowager Lu's right-hand man. Being loyal to her, Queen Mother Lu naturally wanted to protect her at this moment. However, before Queen Mother Lu could finish her words, Lily interrupted her. Is it possible that in the Queen Mother's heart, the royal bloodline is not as important as a slave? Although this matter was not caused by Suho, it was also because of her. My concubine's Mu Bei is gone. These people did not protect him, my concubine. I won't let anyone go. The more Lily spoke, the louder her voice became, as if she was very excited. Empress Dowager Lu snorted, sat up straight, slapped her jade hand on the armrest of the chair, and said coldly, the imperial concubine is excited. Mu Bei is my lifeblood. Now that someone is tearing out my heart, how can I endure it? Even if Suho's crime is not punishable by death, it is a fact that she did not take good care of Mu Bei. Please ask the Emperor to forgive her. I would like to allow my concubine to investigate this matter thoroughly. The eldest prince of Northern Qi disappeared inexplicably. Not to mention that Bei was Liang Mu Bei's mother. It is normal to ask for a thorough investigation. Even Liang He in the court should have an explanation. Now that he has ascended the throne as emperor, everyone in the palace was not in a hurry because he had a son. But now that Liang Mubei has died and Liang He has no successor, the veterans in the court naturally began to worry. Although Suho was a first-class female official next to Empress Dowager Lu, Emperor Yongming would have given the Empress Dowager face if it was an ordinary matter, and the matter was over. However, since the matter was related to the royal bloodline, Lily was unwilling to let it go. She did not take Suho's life, nor did she accuse her of being the murderer of Liang Mubei. She only said that she had neglected her duty and wanted to make her suffer. Therefore, although Emperor Yongming was dissatisfied with Lily being so aggressive, but he still nodded in agreement. "I'll leave this matter to you, Your Majesty." When Empress Dowager Lu heard this, she couldn't help but feel anxious. She opened her mouth and called Emperor Yongming. Emperor Yongming glanced at her and said, "I will order Shangzi to follow you for your errands. Once there are any results, I will give you a reward, just let me know." On the surface, Emperor Yongming agreed to let Beihe take charge of the matter, but in fact Shangzi was the emperor's personal father-in-law. He sent Shangzi to follow Beihe, to run errands for her at best, or to run errands at worst. She is spying on Lily, but Lily already knows who is behind the scenes this time. It is just a cover to touch Suho at this time. She is not prepared to really investigate at this time. Emperor Yongming is a man who has a strong desire for control. The emperor, the entire emperor is under his nose. If there is something he wants to know, he will know it in less than half an hour. If it is something he didn't want to know, even if he just messed up the world, I'm afraid it's also unable to find out the truth. Lily responded with a yes, then stretched out her hand to let go of Suho. As soon as she let go of Suho's head, he knelt down on the ground, his face pale, but his head lowered quietly. After saying this, Emperor Yongming was obviously tired of seeing the woman crying, so he got up and left. When the emperor's bright yellow dragon robes left under their noses, they felt that the unique fragrance of dragon scent on Emperor Yongming had gradually faded away. Only then did Lily stand up. She no longer felt as sad and uncomfortable as when she faced the emperor before. "I'm worried about Mubei, so I won't disturb the Queen Mother." "Thank you, Queen Mother, for your consideration. I'll allow you to rest for a while before I come to say hello. When I feel calm, I'll come back to apologize to the Queen Mother." She finished speaking, without waiting for Queen Mother Lu's reaction. He came over and raised his eyebrows. "Don't take Ensuhi away yet." In front of Emperor Yongming, she had already said that she would make Suho suffer some hardships, and the matter had already been resolved. Now when Empress Dowager Lu heard what she said, she was furious in her heart, but she had a smile on her face. "Your Majesty, please be more careful. The AI family is used to Suho waiting for you." Although her voice was soft and delicate, her eyes were narrowed with an unhappy look. Lily pressed her eyes with a handkerchief and responded softly. She said, "Don't worry, Your Majesty, I will take care of Aunt Suhi's hands and feet, so she can't miss serving the Queen Mother." She imitated the Empress Dowager Lu's tone and finished speaking softly, but when she turned her head, her eyebrows looked like a knife. He ordered the eunuch behind him, "Don't take my aunt away yet." Her attitude made Empress Dowager Lu's hands tremble and her face became gloomy. She did not give Lily any face. "The AI family is tired, you can go back." After saying that, Empress Dowager Lu stood up and entered the inner hall. Lily waited for her to leave, then her eyes fell on Suho, making her tremble all over. Although the mastermind behind Liang Mubei's death was most likely Empress Dowager Lu, Suho also contributed a lot. Now Lily asked about the crime. Although Suho said he had saved his life, Empress Dowager Lu actually saved his life. Not all of her. She was not taken away by Lily, but was beaten 10 times with a cane with her pants taken off, still in front of Fengming Hall. In the past, Suho was a first-class female official next to the Queen Mother. Everyone would respectfully call her aunt when she came in and out. How majestic she was. But now she was stripped of her pants and spanked in public, even though Lily did not want her. It meant her life, so there was no fuss on the board when she was beaten with the cane. But for Suho, the humiliation of being beaten with the cane far outweighed the pain in her body. She tried not to scream at first. Come, until Lily has walked out of Fengming Hall, the dull sound of the board hitting the skin is still coming. Sister, you really don't blame me. Concubine Xian came out of Fengming Palace with Lily. Suho's beating was indirectly equivalent to Empress Dowager Lu being slapped in the face. She did not want to see Concubine De and others today. Concubine Xian naturally resigned and followed Lily. She obviously couldn't believe that Lily didn't make things difficult for her, so she chased her and asked. Lily glanced at her with a half-smile, and then glanced at the palace attendants waiting behind her. Instead of speaking, she snorted coldly, lifted up her skirt, and left. Your Majesty, your concubine has gone too far. Seeing this situation, and Shui, the eldest maid next to concubine Xian, couldn't help stamping her feet and said angrily. And are you also nodded, concubine Xian? With a gloomy expression on his face, he bit his lip, glared at the two of them, stamped his feet and turned around bitterly to go back to the Jianjia hall where he was. Your Majesty, do you really think that this matter has nothing to do with concubine Xian? In the Xianfa Palace, Huai and Poetry knelt in front of Lily and carefully took out the things wrapped on her fingernails. Before falling asleep last night, Poetry said that the impatiens were blooming. This time the flowers bloomed very brightly and the color was right. Lily seemed to have been deeply affected by the death of Liang Muebei recently, so Shiking volunteered to dye her nails for her, so Lily let them go. Yesterday, people from the Xianfa Palace picked fresh impatiens flowers, pounded out the juice, mixed it with alum, dipped the cloth in it and wrapped it around her fingertips for 4 or 5 hours. Now when she took it apart, it was like the flower juice had already been stained with color, and the 10 green-on-green nails were pink, and there were also some near the nails. Huai took the handkerchief and carefully washed her hands, and then plucked up the courage to ask. To be continued. Carrot.